Hello, Kenny. All right, let's see. Let's speak. I'm already seeing new faces in here. Okay, Pete, I sent you a mic. Mandy, how do you accept the mic? Mandy. Oh, yay, there we go. Hey, Pete, how are you?
I am good. How are you? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir, I can hear you good.
All right.
All right, so we're going to give it a few minutes because a bunch of people said they were coming, so I don't know how many to expect. How was everyone's day?
Very
Good.
long.
You were not along. My whole day was incredibly long. I usually don't prepare for these at all. I just kind of make a little list, and today I actually like researched all day.
While we're waiting, do you mind if I tell a story?
No, go ahead.
You're familiar with Famous Amos cookies, aren't you?
I am.
Yes.
Well, Wally Amos, I saw that he passed away on the 13th, I guess, what was that, Tuesday? I didn't realize he was still alive. But when I was growing up, I grew up in a small town in northwest Florida, and we had heard about Famous Amos cookies on the news, but we didn't have them. We had an IGA and a Piggly Wiggly. Neither one of them sold Famous Amos cookies. You know, they sold like Chips Ahoy and stuff like that. So after I graduated from college, I got my first job in Jacksonville, Florida. My mom and brother helped me move into my first apartment, and we went after we got settled in. We went to local Publix to buy groceries, and they actually had Famous Amos cookies. So my brother bought a box, and we got back to my apartment. You know, asked me if I could have some because I'd never tried them before, and he's like, "No, no, no." He actually wanted to take them back to his workplace and show them to all the guys there, you know, intact, and prove that Famous Amos cookies actually did exist.
That's hilarious. Well, it's incredibly sad that he passed away. And I don't know that I've actually had a famous Amos cookie, so I'm going to have to find me some.
Oh, you're missing out.
All right, y'all. Are we ready to get into this?
Yep.
All right. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to Pete for coming. My mind is all kinds of blown that you're here. Um,
I don't know. You've got just, I think you probably have more followers than I do on Twitter, so I'm honored to be here.
oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So, I'm not sure where to start here. I think first we're going to start with if you have screen drops from Kyle Parrish, you guys can go ahead and drop them down in the purple pill. Second of all, I want to go ahead and most of y'all who come to my spaces already kind of know this, but I have followers from all different walks of life. I don't really, I am a Republican, but I grew up in a Democrat household. And so I don't believe in the whole bashing each other thing. So everybody, please try to be as nice as you can. I would appreciate that. I know everybody in the room would appreciate that. Um, but first, I'm going to drop the post that kicked all of this off up in the skylight up there. So give me 1 second.
By the way, this is my first Twitter Spaces, so I apologize if I mess anything up right now.
Welcome, welcome.
You'll
Thanks.
do fine, my guy.
All right.
Can somebody walk Pete through how to raise your hand while I figure out how to get these screenshots posted?
Sure. If on my phone I have an Android, but down the bottom, this the little heart with a plus on the lower right hand side for a reaction. If you tap it on the far right hand side, is the little raised hand. You tap that, that raises your hand,
He
and
got it.
yep. Then whenever you get chosen, you just untap it and and then you can speak and just take turns speaking, and the host choose the speakers. That's it, and then mute yourself when you're not speaking.
Unless the host wants to interrupt you because Cassie sassy like that.
Exactly.
Y'all be nice to me. I'm a good host. It is not my
That
fault
was-
that
That was being nice.
I may have had one shot too many last week, but for the most part, I'm a good host. I'm having a serious problem finding this tweet. I have like 100 different screenshots from him. I went all like commando and went on somebody else's account and went through his stuff today.
This is the guy that was talking shit that got you on the radio, right? Or got you mentioned on the radio?
Yeah. And Pete is the one who mentioned it on the radio.
Outstanding.
Yeah. All right, hold on. I know it's
Hey,
here.
Cassie, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, yeah, Rob wanted me to let you know that he's having some issues with his phone, so he needs to drop off and come back in.
Okay, that's fine. Oh my gosh, I don't have it. Does anybody have the really mean about Western North Carolina tweet?
I do.
You do? Can you post it in the comments, please, so that I can share it?
Yeah, let me see. I will endeavor to do that, I think. Let's see. Can I do like a screenshot? Or...
Yes, you can do a screenshot.
All right.
All right, it says I have a request, guys. If that is you, can you throw me up a heart? Because I'm not actually seeing the request whenever I look. Did anybody do it? Oh, hey, Mike. Wait, maybe it's Rob. It's not Rob. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to dive in. I don't see the tweet yet, but essentially, if you guys were following that day, Kyle basically made a post that said that him and his son were traveling through Western North Carolina where there were, I don't know, I'm going to make this up because I don't have the exact tweet.
It was like 22 or 29 churches,
there.
right?
Oh, Pizza Hero, he posted it. All right. Yes. So he said that in 45-minute drive between two very rural locations that they counted 23 churches, many Trump signs and rebel flags, and 0 libraries. I think we found the problem. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I am from Haywood County, North Carolina. I grew up on a cattle farm with my grandparents in poverty, as in I went to Head Start. I was in the Big Sister program as the little sister. I got free lunch. I wore clothes from Goodwill. I was taken away by DSS multiple times, not from my grandparents, but from my actual dad. When you want to talk about having a hard life, my life has been hard. And so when I saw this tweet, immediately I got angry because this is my home. These are my loved ones that you're talking about. Now, first of all, just so everyone knows, if you didn't follow the tweet, somebody actually posted, and my response was kind of tongue in cheek. But there are lots of libraries in Western North Carolina. Technically, there are more per capita than there are in the rest of the state. But they are smaller, and they are, there's not as many, but once again, per capita, there are a lot. I grew up going to the library every 2 weeks. Mamaw took me. I was read to every single day. I'm not saying that Western North Carolina doesn't have its problems, but what Kyle did was completely bash a whole region of our state. He dug his heels in. And what really made this situation worse is that then he proceeded to call me and another woman who have a lot of followers who are both from the area liars, that we're content creators, so we're selling a myth that you have to be rich to love Western North Carolina. Well, I'm a content creator, but I'm not like the average influencer. Everybody who follows me knows that. I share my real, true experiences in North Carolina, good and bad. If you've been on my podcast, you've heard me and my sister talk about the horrible things that we have gone through over the years. You know that I was exposed to drug abuse and abuse at a young age. Do I think that that is something that only exists in Western North Carolina? Absolutely not, because I lived with my grandparents and that wasn't a part of my experience in their home. I think that what he said was not only disgusting and vile in that it attacked the intelligence of locals and shows that he's completely out of touch with the area, but it also belittled us religiously. It belittled our intelligence, and all of the things that I said in my post in response were actually true. You know, I grew up with my grandparents. We planted a garden. We canned food every year. My grandmother made quilts. I'm a writer. I do all kinds of different creative things. I grew up with a great grandfather who played the banjo, and I remember it. My grandfather taught me how to clog. So these are things that are all very much embedded into my culture. So not only did he act like I'm a liar, but he basically gaslit my entire existence. And this isn't just how he treats me, it's how he treats everyone. So I want to have a discussion about it, and I'm going to open up the floor. And if you guys have screenshots, like, I want to talk about it. I think it's a big deal that we live in a time where it is okay to beat someone up that you don't know anything about because you're that hung up on your political ideology. And let's be honest, that's all it is. That's 100% the reason that he said the things that he said. All right, Dark, and then Steven.
Yeah, I'm going to start this off by saying this. I am not a tremendously religious man by any stretch of the imagination. Although, as I've gotten older, I've come to the realization that there's got to be something out there. Do I think it's an old bearded man in a golden throne on a cloud? No. But the one thing that I've noticed my entire life, ever since my dad moved us to Arkansas when I was like 8 years old, is everybody that doesn't live in the South or has never actually experienced the South think we're a bunch of backwards, redneck, uneducated, racist idiots without ever setting foot inside of a southern state, without ever setting foot south of the Mason-Dixon line. And the reality is, if there were to be a civil war, the South would be the only one to win because we have each other's backs. It doesn't matter if you're from Arkansas. It doesn't matter if you're from Mississippi. It doesn't matter if you're from Louisiana. It doesn't matter if you're from Florida. We've got everybody. We may have our internal little disagreements, but the reality is we treat everybody from the South the same. We don't denigrate them. We may joke and make, funny little comments here and there about our little differences. And, well, do you put bacon in your pepper gravy for your biscuits or no? But I mean, this type of nonsense is actually what divides us as a country, and this is what the politicians and the people in power want us to do. They want us to rip us apart from the inside.
I 100% agree with that. And everybody who knows me, that usually whenever I get into someone over politics, it's actually with a Republican. And I am a Republican, but it's very, very rarely with a Democrat. Like, it's usually a Republican that makes me mad. So it blows my mind. And he called me a Trumper and then deleted it because I was like, please go on my timeline right now and find one reference to Donald Trump. I bet you $1 million you can't do it. And then he deleted the comment because I made him look stupid. oh gosh, Steven, and then Sharon, Bay, and Mike, I think.
Okay, yeah. I'm not sure how well my audio is going to come through because everyone I'm hearing is a little distorted. So, um, but yeah, I guess Kyle's tweet popped up in my feed when it just had like 100 likes, and what really stood out to me was, um, yeah, basically kind of that contrast between libraries and churches. Like, it's a problem that there's too many churches and not enough libraries. And I think, like you mentioned, like, obviously there are libraries in this area. I'm guessing you're just driving down the highway or something, and libraries might tend to be more in the towns and not visible from the highway. But I think if you look historically, like, the reason why, like, Europe and America sort of outstripped the rest of the world technologically was not because we had libraries everywhere. It's because that's where Christianity really took root. And so I think I think it is the churches that made our country great and made North Carolina great specifically, and not libraries. But Kyle seems to be sort of I don't know if he's actually an atheist, but he comes across as like the Redditor type, sort of like, oh, religion bad. And yeah, it just ticked me off. I don't know. But and the other thing I was just thinking is that, like, if you I don't know this off the top of my head, but I strongly suspect that if you are looking into maybe school test scores of where the least educated students, the least educated people in North Carolina, I bet it's not Western North Carolina. I suspect you'd find more lack of education in the urban areas, but that that doesn't fit with his worldview. So you probably won't see him posting about that.
Well, I think that the type of intelligence that you find in Western North Carolina is different. But I also think, and this is honest to God truth, my mama was one of the few people in my entire family to graduate from high school of that era. And her family was very, very into education. A lot of her aunts went to college and became teachers. A lot of my aunts went to college and have succeeded very, very well in life. This idea that hillbillies are uneducated and ignorant is old and played out, and it's offensive. And I'm sick of people thinking that it's okay. It's not okay to bash this group or that group, but it's okay to bash my group. No, absolutely not. Um, Sharon, go ahead, hon.
I'm in the laundry room doing some laundry while I'm doing this. I am multitasking. Um, he put a second tweet after the one he did, trying to clean up the first one that was not a cleanup at all. And but you missed the part where he claimed he was the victim. That it was he was the victim because he would point out things that he thought were important, which the things he was saying were offensive. Which I thought that, and it was after that I was like, you need to stop tweeting tonight. Um, the second thing is, I lived in Indiana for a good long while, and my daughter's dyslexic, and I was taking a course with a sort of a gold standard way to teach kids to read. And because I pronounce my vowels different, the woman that ran the school acted like I was so stupid, and I I was treated like it was very offensive. And it feels terrible to assume just because I say my vowels different that I must be stupid, which is the first thing from the truth, like any of us here. And that's exactly what he was doing. And it's probably why it made me so, well, he did it to you, which I didn't like. But then the whole assumption If you've never been on the other side of that, it is not. It doesn't feel good, and it's not fun. And you know that it's mean. It's really mean spirited.
I am all for freedom of speech, and I am all for, if you want to say something vile and terrible, go ahead, but I'm also all for there being consequences. And I'm not talking about doxing somebody or getting somebody fired, but when you're talking about someone who is actually run for, I believe, what was it, 5th District House, he's actually run for a place in politics before. He currently, him and 2 others, own a PAC here in North Carolina. When you're talking about someone who is that involved in politics, I feel like that right there alone makes it worse. And I want to thank you personally, Sharon. Thank you so much for standing up for me. I really appreciate it. Y'all, I can't even lie. I can't remember what hands were up next. So I'm going to go Pete, Bay, Mike, and Rob. And I think that's close.
Okay, so well, I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be a part of this. I'll just give you just real brief background. I'm originally from New York. I moved down. I went to college at Winthrop University in Rock Hill. I worked hard to get rid of my accent and for broadcast purposes. And my wife is from the Charlotte area. She's from Mint Hill. And I came down here in 1992, and I've been in the Charlotte area. And then I went and worked up in Asheville for about 9 years. And my wife lived in Asheville for a couple of years as well. She went to App State. And one of the things that she was kind of made me very aware of was the prejudice against Southerners in general. Her father was from North Carolina, and at a very young age, he was taken out of North Carolina and brought up to Baltimore. And it was such a scarring event for him in his life. He was made fun of because of his accent, and he was always kind of, I feel like he was always kind of trapped in that feeling, and it did affect him for the rest of his life. And so I've always kind of been aware of it. And when I got to Asheville, I had heard in Charlotte that, people in Raleigh don't think Charlotte exists. I'd heard that for years when I was, working in media as a reporter in Charlotte. And when I went to Asheville, I heard the same thing from people in Western North Carolina. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of the same thing that they said in Charlotte, except what I realized pretty quickly was that actually is true in Western North Carolina. They really don't know that this whole part of the state exists, it seems. And when I got to Asheville and I started meeting people, I realized I got really intimidated, actually, because the people in Western North Carolina tell stories way better than I could. I realized that very, very early, and so like that was an intimidating thing to go into, somebody else's place, and there is a strain of leave me alone. I realized also, and that transcends political affiliation. They just want to be left alone for different things, to do different things. What I detected in Kyle's remarks, and Kyle and I have had Twitter fights for years. He accuses me of being a neo-Nazi. He called me a neo-Nazi, and which I found, I don't get offended, but I would have found it offensive if I got offended. I just found it completely ignorant. My grandfather was Jewish. So of all the people to call a neo-Nazi, I thought that was kind of ironic. He couldn't have known that, obviously, but he's got a savior syndrome, and that's what I detected in his tweet, his initial tweet. It was, and it's a common syndrome that people brought to Western North Carolina and all of Appalachia for a century, probably longer, right? I'm going to come in here, I'm going to save you, I'm going to get you to, get out of this life that you're living. And what the savior doesn't understand is that the people who are living this way, a lot of them like it. A lot of them prefer to keep their culture. Sure, people want a better station in their lives, but they don't want somebody, particularly a guy like me from originally New York and then Charlotte, to come into town and say, this is what you need to do. This is how you get better. I also want to just real quickly hit on the point that I think Stephen raised there about the libraries versus churches. What a completely bonkers metric to try to use to prove whatever point he was trying to prove, particularly for the fact that he didn't drive through the towns where libraries are generally located. They don't put them on the interstate. They put them in the towns where the businesses and the government buildings are, and more of the densely populated areas. So it's just a really weird metric, and it ignores the foundational role that churches have played in American society, as I think Stephen mentioned, but also in education. I mean, religious institutions have been educating kids in America since its founding. The churches founded the universities and such. Like that's so this idea that it's either one or the other, and that somehow or another, if you've got more churches within the sightline of an interstate than libraries, that somehow is the reason why you're voting for a certain candidate. And also, and I'm going to leave it at this, is that it betrays the ignorance that is, I find, to be all too prevalent, which is that if you are of a particular political persuasion, I consider myself to be a lowercase L libertarian. I'm not a member of any party. I voted for Democrats and Republicans and Libertarians, but I find there is just this hefty dose of, well, if you want the government to be small, you must be evil, you must be a redneck, a hillbilly, a racist, or whatever other slur. And it's that, again, it's just bonkers. And I'll just leave it there. I know I've gone on a long time.
You never have to apologize for that. We like it when people talk. I do want to touch on the 2 points that you made. First of all, you're 100% right. People in Western North Carolina have a clan mentality, and that's because we're descended from the Scotch-Irish, and we were left alone for so long. I mean, I'm displaced. I'm in Fayetteville, and I go crazy every single day. I feel like I'm suffocating. I want to go home so bad. I can't stand it. The problem is we cannot move home and afford to live. And so I can't go home. And for those who are home, I can recognize with them, when someone comes in with this savior complex, you're 100% right. I don't want to hear that. I don't need your help. I want to be left alone. You nailed that on the head. And that fits every hillbilly out there. The other thing that you said, just so you know, to me, hillbilly and redneck are not slurs. I proudly claim those two things. I'm 100% not racist, but redneck, I mean, to me, that's a whole different category of being. And I mean, that's just from living in rural areas for most of my life. It's something that I don't associate with the negative things that are viewed as being redneck up north. But when you were talking about churches, I also want to point out, did you know that statistically it's a proven fact that people who are closer to God or have faith in a religion are happier people? Why would you bash that and want to take that away from anyone? It makes absolutely no sense. Mike, if you want to, or Pete, if you want to reply, you can. And then I think it's
Faye's next, then Mike, then Funky Brewster up there.
You rock. Thank you.
Could I? Yeah. So just on that last point, one quick mention there. When you're so one of the things is, if you don't understand the results, reassess your assumptions. And when you're asking why would they bash this thing that makes people happier, because the point of the philosophy is destabilization. The issue is never the issue. The issue is always revolution. And if people take nothing else away from what I say tonight, I hope it's that. This once you understand that framework, then everything else kind of makes sense.
I like it. All right, whoever's next. I think it's Bay. Go.
I'll go. So not to get into my background, I'm not from Western North Carolina, but I'm basically from Western North Carolina, but flatter. South, you've been through Southwest Georgia, Cassie, recently, so you went through my home county where I grew up, born and raised, and it's very rural, very black, very like 50-50 or 40-60-40 black white. So we have very large African American, and they are African American because a lot of them are descended from slave families. So there's a lot of history there, and I for a long time was would get offended uh, by redneck and hick, which is what I got called. I got called a hick because I was married to someone from New Jersey, and his sister particularly loved to try to get under my skin about it, and I used to get offended, regardless of how proud I was, because I was very proud. Um, my mom is from Plains. We had a president. We never didn't have a library in my hometown. We had a president from our county. That I mean, it there's plenty to be proud of. We were the home of Habitat for Humanity was founded there. It there's plenty to be proud of, and intellectually proud, not just you know clan proud, because we were that too. And I'm proud to be from South Georgia because it is just the finest damn people you will ever meet in your life, and that's true of Western North Carolina too, which is the reason that we should be proud, right? That's something to be proud of, like the college in my town, the president from my county. None of that should really matter. What should matter is that it's good people, and that we treat each other good, and that we have each other's back, and that we take care of each other, and that we love each other. And we still to this day, like the families that I know from there, and my friend, we all still love each other. um you know, thanks to Facebook, we still get to talk about how much we love each other. But I am not that person anymore because, for one thing, like Pete said, um, it's not coming from a place of good faith at all. It's very much a savior complex, and I was born into it. Like, that stuff was going on in my hometown the day I was born, 1965. That savior complex, and everybody come to town because we're gonna like completely make you over because you're all horrible people. Well, no, actually, we were all getting along pretty good before you got here. But I mean, whatever. That's what they told me. I don't remember. I was a baby, but at any rate, it's a savior complex. Just like Pete said, everybody wants to remake you because, not because you need to be remade, but because they need to remake something to feel whole. So there's something about where we're
That's a good
from
point.
that's so wonderful that it can transform somebody else's life to get involved with it. I mean, it's sad for them, but it's not for us. I mean, that's the kind of wonderful places that we're from. They're not, um, people they don't value their life based on the books that they've read. Or, well, I mean, we read a lot of books back home. We were really into Southern authors and whatnot, but we didn't value each other based on how, how much we'd read, or what books we've read, or how much, what car we drove. Or, yeah, there's some of that goes on, but that's not, you know a guy could drive up to the print shop in a Mercedes, and a guy in an old beat up truck pull in right behind him, and the two of them would get out and slap each other on the back and have a conversation about how things are going. That's the kind of places that we're from. And people don't understand that. And that's not sad for us, that's sad for them. My job was pep talk.
I'm just going to call it like it is. What has been happening in Western North Carolina since, I would say, the early 90s is gentrification. And everybody on the left pitches a fit when it happens in urban communities, but no one bats an eye that it's happening in Western North Carolina. When you look at Asheville, when I was a kid and in my teen years compared to now, it is a 100% different place. And it is not because of the locals, it is because of the people who have moved in. Now, my hometown in Canton, the mill has closed. You know what's happening? People from Asheville are moving in, buying up the little stores, making them all ritzy and fancy. And my home people are being forced out because they can't afford to live there anymore because the mill's closed. And that's what's happening. Gentrification. They're replacing the people of Western North Carolina. And nobody wants to call it for what it is. And I'll say it. That's what it is. You want to stomp my people out because you see either a value in the beauty of the land, or you see money that can be made, and screw the locals, screw their culture, screw their roots. You don't care. And that's how, Kyle's whole tweet came off. That's what he meant. That somebody needs to come in and re-educate or get rid of us. Okay, so I think it's Mike and then Dark. And
awesome,
then Ralph.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So, I think Pete is probably onto something with the idea that it's just part of the script, right? It's either that or misery loves company. But in the scope of who is Kyle Parrish, when he attacks Western North Carolina, my wife grew up very poor, on food stamps, kerosene heater in a building that got condemned as soon as her family moved out. And she's one of the smartest, most talented people. And I don't think Pete really thinks critically about the fact that even with harder circumstances, that can actually teach you something that money in a school system or anything else can't. It teaches you that grit. And whether it's formal education or that, I think trying to box people into it, box everything together and discount the value of what that does and the life lessons that teaches you is quite frankly just kind of showing it doesn't have critical thinking going on. I tried to go back and get screenshots of Kyle because I realized a year ago, not on my campaign account, but just on my personal Twitter account, I got into it. And the reality is every engagement I ever had with him, it's all post deleted because for me, you have to understand like what I think Kyle is and why I don't personally engage with him anymore, especially not from the governor account, right? I think one, what you touched on earlier about how he's quite frankly kind of bigoted towards rednecks. I think the reason that he projects on everybody else that they're bigoted over silly things like calling Pete a neo-Nazi, which is just so absurd on its face that it's laughable. I think he's kind of covering up his own bigotry and trying to project that on everybody else to feel a little better about himself. But I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't really know. But what it tells me is I look at the totality of Kyle Parrish, and he's really just kind of rage baiting. That's all of his things is he's trying to rage bait people in to drive engagement. I don't really think of him as a serious person, despite the fact that he's running for office. Like, that's scary, but I can't take him as a serious person when someone tries to discuss a topic in good faith and the simplest of logical arguments shows that he's really not even putting an ounce of thought into any of these positions. So, it's like that, attacking the people of Western North Carolina over something so trivial and quite frankly uneducated, like just drive around get off the highways, drive around, look. The idea that there would be more libraries than churches is just bananas. Churches are set up privately, right? You don't want the government to have that many libraries where there's more than churches. I certainly wouldn't want to pay for that. I don't know anybody who would. But, I guess if they're not spending their money and they're spending your money, maybe they would. But yeah, I just take the approach of I'm not going to engage with him because he's looking for that. He was so excited that 1 million people saw what an idiot he is. I'm just surprised he hasn't deleted it yet. I guess he wants to hold on to that as some kind of trophy. But I'm going to be careful. I'm running for office right now, so I'm not going to go that much harder onto Kyle. I tried to find evidence because I know there were some things, Cassie, that you surely would have found fun from the few times I interacted with him. But all I can find is my responses that made him delete his tweets. So.
Oh, that's what he did to me after he called me a liar and a money grubber and all of these other things. And all of y'all know, like, I just started my business. And yes, I make a very tiny bit of money doing what I do, but I'm a stay at home mom. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not out here rolling in the cash. I never have been. And once he figured out he had lied, like, just completely lied about me, and I told him that, he had called Pete a neo Nazi. And I pointed out, I was like, if that were to hurt Pete financially, he could sue you for slander and win. And then he went through and deleted all of his posts where he had lied about me. Okay, so I think it's Dark and then Ralph. But give me 1 second. Hey guys, if there's anybody who has a mic right now and you're not ready to speak yet, can you guys drop down? Because we have two who do want to talk. Okay, Dark and then Ralph.
Thanks, Cass. Okay, so a couple of things, and I really appreciated what Pete had to say. The thing that really bothers me, and this is gonna take a minute, so y'all just bear with me. I'm actually half English. My mother was born in Gloucester. My dad married her when he was stationed at Mildenhall in the Air Force. What I see happening, and this will tie into Pete's points that he was making. What I see happening is, the left plays this race game, which we all know down here in the South, the most racist place according to them. We all get along with everybody just fine. Truly, the issue is an economic issue. The real issue is they want to keep poor people fighting amongst themselves about things like race in order to keep us divided. But now we have something new coming up. And the reason why I mentioned my mom being English is it's almost like we have this elitist aristocracy that sits there and says, I have this many degrees, therefore I am automatically right, and you are a peasant, and go away. And the irony of that is about 10 years ago, there was a show on PBS about families who were taken out into the Alaskan wilderness. Basically, they could bring a few items with them, but they had to build their own homes, forage for their own food, store things. And the ones, and it got me thinking, 100 years ago, 120 years ago, you could take anybody, male or female, drop them off in the middle of a forest, and 30 days you would come back, they would have a shelter, they would have a cellar dug, they would have food, they would have a garden planted. We don't have any of those skills. Well, most of us don't. However, where I'm going with this is this. These elitists, and this is the dumbest thing I have ever seen on any internet posting forum like Reddit or 4chan or Facebook or Twitter, was some idiotic liberal New Englander that was like, we don't need the rural people because, if we run out of groceries, we can just go to the Kroger. Without understanding that, like, where do you think all that stuff comes from? The problem is that these elitists have this white savior complex. I literally saw a post earlier where there was a picture of a bunch of white women that said, hey, white women, we need to help Kamala because black women can't do it alone. Are you sure about that? Like, you guys need to step in? And this is what they do to everybody they think that is beneath them. You can't do it yourselves. Listen to the way the liberals talk. Black and brown people can't use computers. Black and brown people can't internet. Black and brown people can't find a DMV. They are elitist in their ideas because they went to a college, they got some paperwork that said, oh, hey, you're smart, which really meant you're a dumbass because you paid way too much money for a degree that you could have read online for free. And the other point that I wanted to cross with Pete's point that he was making is these are tremendously, and this goes to Marxism, these are tremendously unhappy people. And they figure if they have to toil and suffer, everybody else does too. It is not, in their mind, it is not fair if you sit by a pond and take enjoyment out of the peace and tranquility of it on a beautiful sunny afternoon, watching wildlife do its thing and just appreciating the stillness and the silence of it. They can't stand it. They have to find some way to tear it down and destroy it. As far as what you were saying, Cass, gentrification, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? If you were to drive through, and this also goes to somebody else's point, and I apologize, I can't remember who that was. I was taking notes, but um, if you were to drive through an urban Philadelphia neighborhood and you pointed out how many check cashing places, pawn shops, alcohol stores, everything else, you'd be called racist because it's mostly quote unquote urban. But it's quite okay to walk into some place like Western North Carolina and go, hey, look at all this religious white redneck shit. We can't have that. And the last one was, again, I don't understand why these elitist people think it's okay that, oh, well, I've got to take my turmoil out on somebody, but I can't do it here or here or here. So it's okay to rip down other white people because they live differently than I do. They know things that I don't know. Because you take anybody from New York, you take anybody from New Jersey, well, most anybody, to be fair. I don't want to overgeneralize. You bring them down south and you say, hey, we're going to go camping. They will look at you in horror. Like, wait, what? You want me to go out and sleep on the ground and start my own fire and fish for my own food? Like, no. So, I mean, this again is just the elitist class, which is starting to feel like an aristocracy, like a royalty class, like, most of the European countries had, just looking down on us like, y'all just sit back. We'll take care of everything. We'll just come around and collect our taxes from you, and then we'll make sure everything's okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. And me personally, because I am all about culture, I am against gentrification of any kind. In Wilmington, there was a part of downtown that was absolutely beautiful. Historically, it was a black part of town. They went through, they gentrified it, and guess what? Now there's no black people there. And I don't understand how this is supposed to be improvement on what already existed. Like, it was a beautiful, culturally relevant place in the city. They went through, they upped the taxes. Nobody could afford to live there anymore. Now it's, where all the yuppies go hang out. And it's like, if you had left it alone and invested in the people who actually lived there, the culture would still be there, the people would still be there, and it would be authentic instead of a cheap ripoff, which is what it is now. Okay, so hold on. I'm going to read somebody's comment real quick because they made a really good point. Let me find it. No, that's not it. Okay, so Andy, and I apologize if I get your last name wrong, Perigo, said, a lot of rural counties really haven't been red all that long. My county went mostly red only in 2020. Parrish needs to figure out what made the voters switch. Most of those that I know have the same values from 15 years ago. I 100% agree with that. I think that if Mama and Papa or my daddy were still alive today, I do not believe that they would be supporting the Democrat Party anymore. I just don't. And I was a Democrat for a long time. And I switched, and there is a reason that I switched. The problem is that people like Parrish don't care why we switched. They don't see the fault or the flaws in their own party, and that's sad. I mean, that hurts themselves. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, y'all, I hope I get this right. I think it's Boomstick, Ralph, and No Quarter.
Hello. Something I would like to point out. Uh, he seems to frame a lot of this as us hillbillies are uneducated or we're stupid. I just like to add to this that I just pulled up the list of county school districts. Pulling up a list here of failing schools by county. I'd like to point out that Haywood, Clay, Watauga, Ashe, Madison counties all have 0% failing schools. There's not a single school that's failing. Wilkes, Mitchell, Yancey, and Cherokee County, 14 to 15%. Mecklenburg, 28%. Forsyth, 43%. Guilford, 46%. I think you guys can see the trend here.
And I would like to add on to that. My sister is only 28 years old. It was not that long ago that she was in high school in Haywood County. Those scores are even considering the fact that most of those counties up there can't even afford school books for their students. They're sending home worksheets. Okay? So keep that in mind. While we all complain about where our taxes go, people in Western North Carolina pay their taxes. Are they getting their cut? Because I'm not sure that they are. I'm not. And I also would like to point out that in those rural areas, there's some really cool programs that go on. There are book trucks. They literally drive through neighborhoods. It's a portable library. It's the same thing with doctors, and I can't remember what else, but there's several programs like this that actually go on in Western North Carolina that don't happen anywhere else in the state. So the whole idea that there's not access to, libraries and different things is complete and total hogwash. Don't get me wrong, I wish medical was better up there. I wish that we were investing more money up there, and we're not doing it. But yeah, so no quarter, and then Ralph.
Hey guys, and Dark kind of stole all my thunder. I was going to say that guy, he's an elitist. Little background history on me. I was born and raised in Charlotte. My father was a city person. My mother was Cassie, basically. And I kind of fashioned myself as a hybrid. I got the best of both worlds, and I have watched these people look down the brim of their nose at me my entire life. I'm 58 years old, and they look at you like you are the dumbest hick hillbilly. And even though I was basically a city person, I was raised in Charlotte. Even though I live outside of Charlotte, you lived outside of Charlotte for most of my life. I I was a city person. Everything we did was in Charlotte. But he is an elitist. There was a listener on here I responded to just a minute ago. I think his name was Glenn, and he was asking a question about why KP would go after him having no more listeners or whatever. And he's the type of guy, in my opinion, that he doesn't want people who can think for themselves. People like us, people that can't think for themselves. His message or no message. That's it. I've dealt with these people my entire life. You don't really have to. I mean, I'm the type of person I will do more listening than talking, so that I can learn. You can tell a lot about people just by not saying a word. Just listen to what they say. Look at how they act. Watch them. And he's that type of guy. It didn't take long to figure it out. I had seen early back when I first got on X, Twitter, whatever, and followed Pete because I hear him on the radio every day. And, agreement's not required. I don't agree with Pete on everything, but I listen to Pete and I'll learn from him. And if that makes me a neo-Nazi, then fine. I'll learn from the neo-Nazi. I think the guy is scared of that stuff. He doesn't want you to think for yourself. And like Dark said, he's an elitist. He looks down his nose at everybody that don't agree with him. He came into Western North Carolina there, and I don't know what road he was on or whatever. He sees 23 churches and a bunch of Trump signs. He probably seen one rebel flag in the whole place, and all of a sudden everybody there is some scumbag that don't deserve to breathe. I mean, that's the way these people think. And I a lot of times I don't get it either, but that to me, that's how the type of person he is. And I don't understand it. Probably never will.
So a lot of you guys know this story because I think I've shared this before, but I had the thickest Appalachian accent on the planet. And when I go home and I'm surrounded by my people, I pick it up very, very quick. I cannot help it. But when I moved to Wilmington, kids picked on me so bad. My teachers picked on me so bad that I would come home crying every single day. I have been beat down and harassed for my mountain heritage my entire life. In a time when we're supposed to be embracing all of these different things, you're telling me that it's okay to beat down Western North Carolina? I mean, it's disgusting. And the amount of people who defended his actions and the things that he said. I mean, this man goes around, calls people things that are blatant lies, blatant. I mean, you cannot accuse Pete of being a neo-Nazi when he is descended from a Jew. You cannot call you know what I mean? And this whole idea that, the deliverance idea of Appalachia makes me want to vomit. It's okay if I call people hillbilly. I'm one, but you can't fucking say it. You don't get to do that. No, you do not get to belittle my people. It's just not, no. And I am not an overly political person. You know what I mean? If he had just kept his mouth shut, if he had not run his mouth and tried to act like I was somehow in the wrong and I was ignorant and I was somehow trying to make money off of my heritage, we wouldn't even be having this discussion tonight. You know what I mean? But it's not just me. This is happening to all of these different people from this one account. And what really scares me about it, like I said, is that he ran for office. Someone thought that this was a good guy to put in office. He got money from people to run for office. And now he has his own pack. What does that say about the country that we're living in? You know what I mean? Like oh wow, lots of hands went up. I have no idea. I wasn't even looking at my phone. I know Ralph was next. I'll do Ralph and then Pete and then Mandy because she hasn't spoken, and then I'll get to the rest of y'all.
Hey guys, I hope everybody can hear me. I guess as I listen to the conversation, and I'll be honest, I haven't followed this guy. I really know who he is that well. I haven't only been in Twitter for a little while. The thing that comes to mind to me is that people talked about elitist. I just think he's an unhappy person who has to attack other people with ad hominem type attacks to make himself feel better. And it just says a lot about the type of person he is. So that just kind of struck with me. And I think, I probably would rather live somewhere with 23 churches than I would in a lot of the places that have high crime, homelessness, a lot of the problems a lot of rural or not rural, metropolitan places have. What's wrong with having 23 churches? That's probably helpful to a set of values that helps people live together and get along. And probably somewhere I'd rather raise my kids than in a city where there is no values and it's all relative. So I don't know. I didn't have a lot to say. I think it says a lot more about him and the ad hominem type of. And where did tolerance go? I thought the left was all about tolerance and acceptance, and I guess as long as they can benefit from it or something. I guess I don't know, but I would think that when you start calling people names, it's the lowest form of dialogue, and I just name calling to me, especially when you're being so, and again, elitist, but it's just to me it's more a personality problem with him. Like what why do you why don't you like yourself? Why do you have to drag other people to make yourself feel better? I don't know. Seems like a personality problem. I used to say to people, I'm in management for like 25 years, so I've got uh, I've got um, a, a honorary degree in psychology. So I used to say, if you have a problem with one person, that's a personality conflict. If you have a problem with a lot of people, it's a personality disorder. Anyway, that's all I got.
There's a reason, and people have asked me numerous times, Cassie, why don't you run for office? And I'm going to tell you, because I have an anger problem. And I'm worried about my hands more than I'm worried about my mouth. And that's why I won't run for office, because I know me. That inner hillbilly, that redneck trailer park trash part of me. Oh boy, it's hard to control. Pete, go ahead, hon.
Well, I think there's a lot of good insight. I think people are hitting on a lot of the key themes that anybody who has had any kind of interaction with this guy and has paid any attention to what's going on in general out in Western North Carolina would have recognized. One of the things that, as I'm sitting here, I'm a why guy. I like asking why. It's one of the 5 W's that reporters, for some reason, never seem to ask, but it's the most informative question to ask, because you'll get the best responses and you get actually some insights into why people do stuff, right? So I started thinking and reading through his tweet again, and let me just, for the sake of this discussion, assume that he's not lying about his little road trip and the details that he laid out. Why would you think to count churches in the first place? What would prompt somebody, as they're driving down the road, to start counting up churches? That to me is kind of a bizarre, I would say weird, but I feel like that word's been like totally overused in the last 2 weeks. So it seems odd to me, and I'm curious about that thinking. There was comments made about rage baiting. I think Mike said it about how he's a rage baiter. He totally is. I actually had him muted because that's the way he would always engage. And look, I engage with people how they engage with me. If you want to, on Twitter, if you come at me, or on the radio, if you come at me and you want to have a discussion about policy and philosophy, I can do that. Absolutely. I prefer it. But if you want to come and troll, well, I'm your Huckleberry on that too. I'm totally well versed in defending myself against trolls. And I have a good time doing it. And then, of course, a lot of my followers like to join in on that fun as well. And Kyle has he ran his course. A lot of people had fun with him, and then it was like, okay, now I just feel like I'm mugging a dead guy. So I'm just going to kind of move on. And so I had him muted for a very long time. And the thing to always keep in mind with him, and this is why he deletes so many tweets, is first off, he's terrible at debate, at rhetoric, at just logical argument. He's just awful at it. And that goes to the point about clout chasing or rage baiting. And it's the thing I say to him whenever I would engage with him, is that he's just clout chasing. I would say that to him. And that's the thing that angers him the most, because it's true. That's what he does. There was a question about running for office. Like, I think, Cassie, you were concerned that this guy's run for office. So just to kind of talk you off the ledge there, the guy ran against Virginia Fox and got absolutely creamed. And Democrats need as many people as they can to run in these offices because the seats are drawn to, like in Virginia Fox's district, she's going to win that seat. So any Republican's going to win that seat. So he was like it. They didn't spend any money on him. He's a joke. I think even the Democrat Party chair, Anderson Clayton, like, she went after him over something about a year or so ago, something that he had said as well. So he doesn't have a lot of support. So just take comfort in that. And then there was one last point in talking about elites, and that is absolutely correct. They're credentialed, right? That's why they pay the money to go to these universities with the better names, and it's a credentialing system. And if, like, I read Hillbilly Elegy before J.D. Vance was even running for office, and that became very clear in reading his book about when he went to Yale. It's an access mill, right? And there's a piece today or yesterday in Washington Examiner written by Selena Zito called "Elites Think Rural Voters Can Be Hoodwinked by a Flannel Shirt," and it taps into exactly what we're talking about tonight. And I highly recommend the read.
I'll definitely have to check it out. When Hillbilly Elegy first came out and I read it, I was really offended because if you're from Haywood County, North Carolina, Ohio does not feel like Appalachia. It just doesn't. And so I felt like, and I am very hillbilly. It is very hard for me to talk ugly about my family. And I get that a lot because I've shared a lot about my dad and the things that I've been through. And people often will send me DMs like, you always talk about your dad like you love him so much. Well, I do. That's part of my heritage. You don't talk ugly about your family. And so reading that book was very hard for me. But at the same time, I can identify with what he went through because that was very much so my experience. And it's very much so the experience of many other Appalachians, even if we don't talk about it. And so watching him get shredded for his Appalachian, roots it's really sad. You know what I mean? Like there's a million other things that you could pick on JD Vance about. Like really, like you have to resort to where he's from. Like it kind of goes back to what Kyle does, like you don't have anything else. He picked up nothing from his trip to Appalachia other than churches and libraries. That's it. That right there tells me he didn't interact with anyone. Like no one. He could not have spent time actually speaking to locals. And why? Because he thinks we're beneath him. Okay, Mandy hasn't spoken yet, and I don't know who was first down here at the bottom. So I'm gonna go with
Hey, Cass, if I may.
Yeah.
It's Mandy, Mike, Brian, me, and then No Quarter, and then Betty.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, go guys.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was echoing in my own head. Bourbon. Anyway, I am not in western North Carolina. I'm in the swamps of southeastern North Carolina. It's basically hillbillies with alligators. Okay. But him going on about rural America, rural areas, just ticks me off to no end because with his comments, basically we're too stupid to live and too dumb to die, but yet he's got 2 brain cells and they're fighting for 3rd place. Okay. I just don't understand it. I mean, if you're so miserable here, pack up your crap and take your ass back to Virginia where you come from.
Oh, we all know how I feel about that. I support that 100%. And something else that I think is really funny, a lot of Democrats came to my defense or ripped him for what he said about all of us. And, that's one thing that I love about my state is that as long as you're a local, other locals are going to come to your defense no matter what your political background is. You know what I mean? If I were to walk in somewhere and I knew someone was a Democrat and I knew that they were local and they were getting bashed from some outsider, Republican, I'm with my local. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of the attitude that we have. And I wanted to say something else really quick and then we'll move on. But people up north view Christianity differently than we do in the South. And I think that that's because of and somebody who's from up north, please correct me if I'm wrong, but up north has this very Puritan kind of feel to it. And so when you talk about the Christian views up there as compared to the Christian views down here, there's a wide difference. I consider myself a North Carolina Christian. I go to church on Sunday. I might drink the night before, get in a fist fight, and then go to church. And I don't feel guilty about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I have done anything wrong. And that is just how everybody else in my family is. I love God. I pray. You know what I mean? But I'm not anal. And so I think that a lot of people who move down here think, oh, there's all of these Christians and oh, they're all so uptight. Well, you must not know a whole lot of North Carolina Christians. All right, y'all. I think it was Mike next.
Yeah. So when I think through that, I actually shared something to the chat there that Kyle posted on August 7th, right? Where he's an ex premium user with his paid check mark and he's calling it a Nazi platform. So like he clearly doesn't even believe the things he's saying. Like if you truly believe it was a Nazi platform, why would you pay money to it and support it financially with your dollars? Like he clearly doesn't believe the nonsense that he's putting out there into the world. But when I think through that, like Pete, I think I 100% agree with you that he's not really a threat on a political level. He's probably like seen as a liability within his party, and the serious members of the Democrat Party probably like wish he would go away just as much as everybody he offends with his rage probably wishes he went away. But I think, and Cassie, we talked about this when I was on your podcast. Division is the goal of the operatives. So he's playing to a very specific subset within the Democrat Party base where he's leaning into the most radical, asinine elements that the serious Democrats wish he wouldn't, because, I think Pete and I also agree that the why. I'm always someone who asks why. It doesn't matter what it is. I want to know why. And then I also very much follow up why with follow the money. And the reality is, if he can come out there as ludicrous as it is with just nonsensical stuff that even he clearly doesn't believe, while it's not going to be beneficial from the serious Democrats here, there is certainly a segment within the party that will play on that, and it certainly helps fuel the division. So even though it's kind of a liability for the serious members of the Democrat Party, it's fueling that engagement. So it supports the broader sort of divisive element that's at play in our political system, because I truly believe that the only reason that operatives can do that, when I ask myself why would they do that, division is the only thing that can come from it, that or money. And that's why I say that those two things really make sense, that it's to divide intentionally, and it's probably some financial interest, right? I mean, he's paying for X Premium, a platform that he's calling a Nazi platform because a private person decided to have a conversation with a former president who, I'm a libertarian. I have big problems with all of them. That's not the topic of the show, but like it was a conversation between two people, and he's calling it fascism and a Nazi platform. Advertisers hate it, but I'm going to pay for it. Like it's just, that's why I'm not going to engage with him directly. But just do a search for, at KPNC and just any word that's something that would be designed to fuel hatred and division, you'll probably find it. Like that's his whole thing. That's his whole shtick. And if you respond with logic or thought or even any remote level of probing, he simply falls apart and ends up deleting it because he'll get embarrassed by anybody, certainly anybody capable of thinking or asking why to any question.
Agreed. All right, y'all. Dark, you were on top of this. Who's next?
It's going to be Brian, then me, then No Quarter, then Betty, then Punky Brewster up there.
Thank you, Dark. Oh, everybody say hey to Dan Bishop. I see he has entered the room. Hey.
Hey, Dan.
Hello.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Dan, if you would like to speak, let me know, and I will see if somebody will drop down so I can pull you up. All right, go ahead.
I'll drop. My wife wants me anyway.
I'll go ahead, Cassie. Thank you, everybody. And Pete, thanks again for what you do here in Charlotte. As a denizen of the great state of Mecklenburg, who's actually traveled through all 100 counties of the state, I can tell you unequivocally that many things happen in the western part of the state that completely pissed me off as far as resources and everything else. And the one guy that was, talking a lot of mess just that's just terrible. It's just not good. It doesn't do anybody any good, especially in this state. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, we've all got to stick together. So that really pissed me off, even being here in Charlotte. But a lot of what happens in my mind, and I don't want to kick over a hornet's nest here, but what happens is you got folks who, especially in the urban communities, and I see this a lot here in town, whether they're folks who are what I like to call foreigners, those from other parts of the country versus us natives. What I see is a lot of either affluent white female liberals or angry white female liberals, awfuls as we call them, who really drive a lot of this stuff. And it's just like, what are y'all doing? I mean, why do you have to be this way? What's going on here? I mean, can we not call a timeout and just try to work together here and not denigrate everybody, especially our friends in the in the outlying areas, right? And so it just bothers the shit out of me. And I'm even being here in North Carolina, or in Charlotte, I should say. And what's funny was, and again, not to kick over a hornet's nest, but when I went to Carolina years ago, a lot of my eastern North Carolina friends would denigrate the western part of the state, and it doesn't do us any good, and it just frustrates me, and it's just one of those things that just drives me nuts. And it's like we just as a group, we just need to be what's the word I'm looking for? Better or more homogeneous, just trying to lift each other up, right? So that's all
because I have roots in two different parts of the state, and because I lived that whole experience of being, trashed for being part hillbilly and going through that whole thing, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's why I talk so much about Western North Carolina and about the culture and the heritage up there, because you're right. People in the eastern part of the state know nothing about it, which is incredibly sad. Like, we have this wonderful, beautiful, almost untouched part of our state that half of us know nothing about. And so there comes in this stigma and this fear of the unknown, and it's really sad. And it's got to stop, because
yeah, you're right. I mean, my daddy as well used to travel a lot in the state, and he, and I saw this a little bit too, is just resources wise, the western part of the state was just crapped on compared to the eastern part of the state. And it's like, why?
Western North Carolinians feel other than when you're talking about the rest of the state. And that bothers me, because I do not want my home to feel like it's not a part, because it is. It's 100% a part, and we should all be working really hard to make sure that they know that, and we shouldn't be slamming them and making the issue worse.
Yep.
All right, Dark, you know who's next. Dark. All right, I'm just going to skip you. All right, no quarter, and then Betty.
Yeah. As far as like Kyle goes, I wanted to say, oh shoot, I lost him now. I keep wanting to say Rob, but it wasn't Rob. It was the Libertarian guy running for governor. I can't. His name's slipping me right at the moment, but
It's Mike.
Mike, okay. Yeah, he touched on this. I don't know exact words, but he kind of touched on this a little bit. Kyle is the type of person, he doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is the people that buy into what he's trying to sell. He reminds me a lot of someone like AOC. They're like used car salesmen, they got a great talk, but they're not very smart. And they'll sell you on anything. And then as soon as you leave the lot, the check engine light comes on. You really find out what's going on. And I mean that the people that follow these people and vote for these people are the scary ones. They're the spooky ones. They're the ones I worry about, because in this guy's case, I mean, as Pete elaborated on, he lost by a ton in his election, and they'll just move on to the next person that's just like him, and these people will be buying into that. And that's the spooky people, in my opinion.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. I'm not going to say this yet because after we get through all the questions, we're going to change topics just slightly. It's still going to be about Kyle, but I have some things that I want to bring up. So,
Hey,
Miss
can I go
Betty,
now?
yeah, go Dark, and then we'll do Betty, and then Rob, and then I think Ragnar wants to talk to.
I apologize for the gap. I was indisposed at the time. One of the things that who was it? Pete brought up. Here's the thing. What concerns me about what Kyle is pulling is, and we need to look at the bigger picture. This is an incursion into Western North Carolina by the Democrats. This is trying to gain a foothold, gain traction, as well as he's trying to and I totally agree with Pete about the fact that he's trying to gain, he's clout chasing. But this is also about them trying to get a foothold in, because if they can raise enough money, if he can bring enough things up, like, I saw 23 churches and rebel flags, which, by the way, I understand how some people feel about the rebel flag. I was born in Oklahoma. I was a military brat. I moved all over the world with my family. My dad was born in Ohio, raised in Indiana. I feel a connection with the rebel flag, not because it represents slavery or anything else, but it represents all of the good things about the South. Neighbors, home, making the best of the worst situations. And, nobody asks anybody how they feel about the rebel flag. All they say is, oh, it's tied to slavery, it's bad. That's it. Even though we have a pride flag that literally is being displayed over Capitol buildings of states, that literally has a whole couple of pedophile stripes on it. And nobody's saying, hey, we got to get rid of that. However,
hold on, I have to cut in. Is that true?
Yeah.
Really? That's like, there's pedophile stripes on the flag?
Yeah, they're called minor attracted persons. They're trying to make it. They're trying to make it.
Version of the flag has those stripes.
What's that?
Say that again.
I don't think the most common version of the pride flag has those stripes, but there's hundreds of variants. They're always adding different colors.
Oh wow!
I think
okay.
The main, the basic rainbow flag is just trying to capture the rainbow imagery.
So I'm a freedom of speech person, and so I feel like you do. Like, I don't have a problem with the rebel flag. I don't display it because of the things that people associate it with. I don't want to do anything that would ever make anyone feel uncomfortable. But I mean, I grew up in a time when, these things were no longer issues. I was born in the 80s, like none of this was going on. All of my friends, or not all of my friends, but a huge portion of my friends were Black. I knew Black guys who wore rebel flag t-shirts. Like, it doesn't it doesn't have that same negative connotation for me, but I try to be respectful because I know that it does for others. However,
yeah,
I'm with you on freedom of speech is freedom of speech. And to me, you cannot regulate my right to freedom of expression. And I do not believe that it should be outlawed, but I feel the same way about the LGBT flag. To me, I mean, I don't want to see it displayed in schools, but I don't think the rebel flag should be displayed in schools either. You know what I mean? But like, I have no problem with that flag. If you want to fly it, if you want to wear it, if you want to put it on your car, like, that's your right. You're an American. Do you? But I feel like by that same token, I feel like the rebel flag kind of gets. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the only flag that should be flown in schools is the American flag, the U.S. American Stars and Stripes flag. That's it. End of discussion. I don't believe in what I would like to see is the Pledge of Allegiance reinstated, but take out the 1955 McCarthy added line of, under God, because I don't agree with that. And I don't think it's right. And just put it back to the way it was. However, another thing that Pete said that I found really interesting was the question why. And I'll say this simply because this is what I did with myself when my marriage broke up when I was in my early 20s. Instead of getting mad because she wanted a divorce, I said, okay, there's a lot of things that she did that was wrong, but there's a lot of things that I reacted to badly. And why did I react that way? And I started walking it back and walking it back and back and back. And I found out a lot of it came from my childhood and learning to understand that I was conditioned, not intentionally, it's just a natural thing, that I was conditioned to respond a certain way when certain circumstances arose. However, like I said, my biggest thing is this is just a foray into Western North Carolina for Democrats. They're planning on coming, and they're planning on coming in full force. They want this state. That's why Kamala was here, yesterday or the day before? That's why they're dumping so much money into this state. They want this damn state, and they're going to try and take it by hook or crook. And as far as everything else, Ralph was mentioning, the tolerance of the left. Yeah, you know what the left is? There's an old adage about crabs in a pot. That if one crab tries to escape as the heat turns up, the other crabs will drag it back down. That's exactly what the Marxist left is right now.
Okay, so I want to push back a tiny bit. I don't see all Democrats as Marxists. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't. There are a lot these days. And really, that's kind of the reason I ended up leaving the Democrat Party back in I don't know, the last time Obama ran. I was seeing things happening that I was concerned about. And the fact that there wasn't a mass departure from the party scared me. You know what I mean? Like, I would have expected the more moderate minded Democrats to also leave, and they didn't. And the fact that for me, and I can't speak for all Republicans, but for me, I get just as irritated with the extremist Republicans as I do the extremist leftists. You know what I mean? But the left has moved so far left that I feel like I have to vote Republican, and that irritates me too.
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying every Democrat is that way. Like, take people like Bill Maher or Dave Rubin. They're classical liberals. There's nothing wrong with them. They're centrist. They're center left at best. They've still got common sense about them. What I'm saying is, we're dealing with a party now. Look at what the news reports were from Kamala coming out today and saying, "Hey, you know what? We're going to impose price controls on food and housing." That is literally Marxist. That is going to create an environment that nobody can afford. So I wasn't saying necessarily all Democrats. I was just simply saying they're trying to spread.
We might have to do a spaces on that, because a dear friend of mine asked me why Democrats are called Marxists, and we're not going to get into that in this discussion. I want to get through these last few, and then I want to move on to something else. But maybe in the future, if I can find somebody who I feel like can tackle the discussion with a little tact, then maybe we'll have that talk. All right, so I believe, and y'all, if I get this wrong, please don't be upset with me. I think it's Betty, and then Ragnar, and then Rob, and if I got that wrong, I apologize.
Thank you. I have been waiting patiently and have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation here. First time I have been to your space. I usually am on listening to spaces at night. Uh, Trash Discourse. I don't know if any of you all have ever been on his spaces, but they are very good. Some of the others, well, I'm not going to name the other two or three, but I don't know how I happened to come across this. And I'm going to just throw out some things. I'm a native born Tar Heel, Raleigh. We used to think of Charlotte uh, as the city that looked down their noses at Raleigh. Um, and we pronounce it all different ways as Raleigh and Raleigh and all different ways. I probably sound like I have come from out in the country, but right here in the city. Um, I think, and I had never heard of this character, Kyle Parrish. So while I was listening to you other folks talking, and by the way, I am probably the oldest one on here. Uh, if you look at my, whatever the little descriptive thing is on Twitter, now X, I mentioned that I was born in the 40s. So I was very young when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. So I've been through all of the different periods in this, that have been happening in this state in particular. Had an uncle who was on the North Carolina Supreme Court. His daughter, Cassie, you might be intrigued about this. After she graduated from, we were the same age, and my mother, his brother was the one who would soon be on the North Carolina Supreme Court. I don't think he was at the time. He was North Carolina Appeals Court. But my cousin was getting married to, gosh, all of a sudden my mind's gone blank. Dan Moore from Canton, I believe. I think one of the first Westerners who was elected governor of the state. And I can remember, and at the time, my immediate family was supporting someone else in the primary. This was when the primaries were still going on. We were supporting someone else. And my mother gave me, I was in the wedding, and my mother gave me implicit instructions when we were going to the rehearsal dinner. You will not discuss politics with anybody tonight. This is family. We're not going to, start tearing each other up. Well, I'm sitting there with the guy I was dating at the time, and I had told him, we can't make faces or, we've got to mind our manners. And across the table, someone brought up, well, we're so glad to have so-and-so here tonight. And I'm nudging, my date with my elbow saying, I want to say something so bad. But I didn't. I mean, you still had manners around here then. But he was a good governor. And I even took, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but I took a trip to the Holy Land back with my church group back in 1990. Let's see, my daughter was in high school at the time, 1990, 89 or 1990. And who was in the group with us but Janelle Moore? And she stayed, and if any of you all are old enough to remember, she was always had her hair pulled back in a bun. And she had on a three-piece suit and high heels. She wore those heels all over Jerusalem. I could not believe it when we would be going on our tours, and I look over, and there she was, and she always stayed just as neat. And I talked to her once in a while because she realized I was married to, I was a relative of her daughter-in-law. But that's another story. I think that I hate it that you all feel like that people in other parts of the state have turned up their noses at the western part of the state because, gosh, that's where so many from this area and from Charlotte, I have relatives in Charlotte who have homes up there. In the mountains. I have a brother and sister-in-law who just went up there and spent a month with their grandchildren. They rent a house every month up there. I hate it that there are Yankees, I'll put it that way, moving in and taking over those smaller towns, because that isn't what you want. But I do feel like that the attraction of people, even from Atlanta, I know people from Georgia have homes up in the western part of the state. You all offer so much up there, and um, I know that there's a gal from even west of Asheville, because she said she just wasn't going to drive 2 or so hours to get to the rally or the semi rally yesterday in Asheville. But Margot, North Carolina, and Dan Bishop, if you are still listening, I wanted to tell you that last night on Trash Discourses Spaces, there was a gentleman, I call him a young man, from the Heritage Group or Heritage Foundation. I'm not sure what the full name is, but I asked a question there toward the end. I said, look, I just want to know who I can trust, because we know there's a uniparty. Who can I trust up there? And someone else spoke up and said, you don't trust anybody until you vet them, until you call them, until you tell them what you expect them to do. And I said, yeah, but look how disappointing some of our North Carolina folks have been. And, but she's, or he said to me, he got on to answer the question. He said, well, I see you are a fellow, a Tar Heel. He said, I went to Duke. And I said, oh, no. He said, I know. He said, but I've got to get away from all these people. He said, because those folks at Duke are just going crazy now. But he said, to be sure and follow you, Dan Ross. He said, if you want to know somebody that should be your next attorney general, it's Dan. So I had already seen your information on some stuff, and I was planning on voting for you. But as far as the East is concerned, down East, our family always enjoyed going to the beach. Some of the best folks around. Listen, when the time comes and they start coming after me, I have no guns in the house. My husband was a hunter. He's deceased. So I sold his rifles and his shotguns and all and its fishing gear and all that stuff. But I will either travel if I can get to the mountains, or I'll go down. As I told somebody one time, I'm heading down to Fort Bragg, and it's still Fort Bragg as far as I'm concerned, or Camp Lejeune. Um, this guy in Cary is crazy, and he's one of those Yankees, I think, who must have moved into the area. When we got the Research Triangle, Raleigh changed. That's why North Carolina now is not a, for sure red state. My precinct, um, older part of Raleigh, great people, and I had worked in the precinct some years ago. We're all friends. They're Democrats. I'm Republican, but I don't know why they are still Democrats. Not when the choice is what we have today. There's so anyhow. I'm going to shut up now, but I did want to just say it's been interesting hearing all your different views, and you know I have never ever looked down. I haven't been to the mountains that much. My daughter went up there to Camp Cheerio some years ago. My she and her family now live in South Carolina. We have gone up to the mountains. They are some of the most beautiful places where all the waterfalls are. I can't think of. I don't know if that was. I'm not sure where that was, but we have gone up there and rented a house ourselves and stayed when the grandchildren were a little bit younger. Two of them are in college now, but at any rate, we have a beautiful state. It's why it's called the Variety Vacation Land, and we just cannot let the more extreme liberals, and there are some extreme ones, as there are some extreme on the far right. I am not in that group, but I think if we all can just get to our precincts and do what we can to 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 try to keep this country the way we want it to be and not what it might be turned into. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And Miss Betty, you have an absolutely beautiful accent. I just want to say that. I think it's Ragnar, Steven, and then Rob, and then we're going to move on to, yeah, well, all right, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Um, this is my first time on the space. Um, I am a little bit of an interloper because I currently and have resided in Virginia for for many years. Actually live in a very beautiful part of the state right now. Very rural, very conservative. But I grew up not in eastern North Carolina and not in western North Carolina, but in the Piedmont region, between Burlington and Greensboro, and outside of a little town called Gibsonville, little mill town, and had a had a nice childhood growing up with my grandparents and my mom and dad. Wasn't always a bed of roses, but it was a good upbringing. And I had a little bit of a JD Vance up experience myself, because from Central North Carolina, I went to a Christian college and studied philosophy, and from there I went to Yale Divinity School. And at Yale, I encountered a completely different type of person. um, Many of them gave me, when I told them where I'd gone to college, they wanted to know why I was there. What are you doing here? And my response was always, I'm here to broaden my perspective, to understand why you believe the way you do, and just to get a better view of the world. And one of the interesting things was a group of other students. We were trying to start a small evangelical group at Yale Divinity School now, and when we went to get funding, one of the people said, "So what's going to prevent us from having the KKK start a group here?" Um, that was an eye-opening experience for me, and I was just kind of reflecting on what someone said about Kyle earlier, about how they're sure that some people in the Democrat Party would wish he would shut up. But I seem to remember that Barack Obama made a comment about bitter clingers, people who cling to their religion and to their guns. And but they say these things behind closed doors. They call us deplorables behind closed doors. College is saying out loud in public what people behind closed doors say about um, the people and places he encountered. Um, I also want to say Kyle has a profound lack of history of churches, because if he knew anything about religious history, he would know why there were 23 churches in Western North Carolina that he encountered, and why they're all over the place, because that's the heritage, well, of the U.S. and of North Carolina. Probably most of them were Methodist and Baptist. Um, if I care, if I'm speculating on that, because that's about what I run into here when I'm driving around rural Virginia, is Methodist and Baptist churches all over the place. And there's good reasons for that and why that's the case. So I wouldn't count him quite as much an outlier of the Democrat Party as we might hope would be the case. I think he might reflect the very elitist attitude that exists there, and looks down on the values that many of us have held dear for a long time. Um, but again, like I said, I know Vance, when he was at Yale Law School, one of his faculty members said, if I didn't know where you came from, I would have never had you accepted into Yale Law School. And it's a very different kind of attitude. It's very uh, it's intimidating, and to know that there are people out there who that's the way they think about others. So anyway, nice to meet you all. That's a little bit of my background.
And that actually scares me. And I have reached out to a couple of Democrats to ask them to come on the show, because I would love to know. And I'm talking about the podcast, because I would love to know, like, are they as extreme as what I'm envisioning? Are they not? Like, I would like to know from someone who is a Democrat in North Carolina, like, what do you believe? I want to know how different it is from what I believe.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yep,
But
the perception.
right,
Because,
and nobody wants to take me up on it.
oh no, they don't want to talk about it. They don't. I have friends here who are from various parts of the state and the country who are Democrats and liberals, and they don't want to have a conversation. Um, they take every opportunity, and they're friends. We have a common activity that we do together, but they will take every opportunity to try to provoke me into a conversation or to make me angry. Um, and because they know where I stand. And it's very frustrating. And I can tell you, I like I said, being at Yale, I was really shocked at some of the attitudes that people had. I mean, sometimes it was funny because they'd ask me where I where I went to undergraduate, and I would tell them, and it was run by a prominent televangelist, and they knew what it was. And when I would tell them, they would turn sheet white and start to stammer because they didn't know what to do with me. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, that worries me. Maybe one day I'll be able to get a room full of Democrats and we can all discuss it. I feel like we all do pretty good, some of us better than others, about not bashing each other in this space. So maybe one day we'll be able to get enough Democrats in here that we'll be able to have a mature conversation about that.
I feel like that was pointed at me.
Maybe a little bit. I love you, that dark. All right, Steven and then Rob.
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up on a little of what Miss Betty said. Is that, like, in her lifetime, North Carolina has changed a lot, especially with the research triangle. I'm sort of a numbers person, so occasionally I'll look up some statistics, and I've just been astonished looking at, how the triangle area has grown. Durham, Raleigh, even the suburbs, Cary, the smaller ones, Wake Forest, Holly Springs, Fuquay, Varina, and it kind of seems like there's an ever expanding ring of these previously small towns that are now being incorporated into suburbs, and you just have the growth explode, and then it's not the same town that it was. But I think in the long term, the trends aren't looking good, either politically or culturally, because I think one of the things Cassie had mentioned was, a lot of older Democrats have switched to be Republicans, and I think one of the reasons for that is because traditionally even the Democrats in North Carolina were more conservative, but one of the political trends we've seen over the later half of the 20th century into the 21st century is sort of polarization between the parties. It used to have a lot more conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans. There's more of an overlap, whereas now the parties have kind of separated on that axis. So I think that's one of the reasons why we see so many, why we see the voter registration shifts of voters who used to be registered as Democrats, maybe registered as Democrats for a very long time. They're switching to Republican. It's not because their political philosophy has necessarily changed, but their party has left them behind, and that there's not too much room for conservative Democrats in the party. And so, but I think what we see is a lot of the citizens moving in from other states, especially to the urban areas, is really what is keeping North Carolina as a purple state. Without that, I think we would be a solid red state. So, I think anyone interested in the long-term future of the country really needs to take a close look at the trends and what we can do about that. And I think one of those things is sort of aggressively counter-signaling to anyone like Kyle Parrish, who is, denigrating North Carolina culture, denigrating our values. And I think I don't know if Dan Bishop is still here, but I'm hoping he is elected Attorney General, because every time we have Republicans in office, pushing for sane policies, when those make the news, like HB2, and those when people are reading about that all across America, if they think of North Carolina as a place where there are sane conservative policies, I think that is a good deterrent to keep the insane people from moving here, even if they really want to benefit from the economic prosperity that some of the policies also bring. But that's kind of off topic. But I messaged Cassie. I'll be glad to join her in a space talking about the strong connections between the Democratic Party and neo-Marxist ideas, because I think that's a very fun conversation, because it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. But I think I think there's definitely some validity there.
I'm so sorry. Hold on. I had a important message that I had to reply to. Yeah, no, I actually do agree with you. And I've said this before. You know, because I grew up in a family that was split half and half. My Western North Carolina family was very Democrat. My Eastern North Carolina was Republican. Um, you know, I kind of have beliefs that really aren't entirely Republican. But like I said, I can't, with good conscience at this point, vote for a Democrat. Will it always be that way? I don't know. You know, we'll see how things go. But as of right now, I cannot, in good conscience, do it. I just can't. And so that could change. And I'm so glad that you brought up Dan Bishop, because there is a point that I would love to throw out there. Um, I really, really want to talk to people in the Republican Party about the medical marijuana bill. And if anybody who is in the audience wants to take me up on that and wants to know why I support it, please reach out to me, because I feel like that is one thing with the Republican Party in North Carolina right now that bothers me. But that's it. Okay, so I'm sorry, Rob, you're going to have to wait. Pete, go ahead, and then Rob.
Oh, I can wait for Rob. That's totally fine. I think he's been waiting longer than I have. I'm totally fine to wait.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Rob, go ahead.
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hello, Cassie. You have quite the lineup. Hello, Mandy, Steve, Pete. We got Kenny. What's up, Kenny? Who else is on here? Mac, Thomas, Dave, Richard, Darren. So many awesome people. And you mentioned Dan Bishop. I'm with you. I got to say two things real quick, Dan. One, thank you for voting against FISA 702. You will be, I'm forever grateful for that. But Cassie's right. You have an open invitation to come on the Libertarian Party of North Carolina's podcast. We don't have someone in the AG race. I am inviting Jeff Jackson as well. But I will sing your praises for voting against warrantless spying on Americans. And we need to have a chat about your anti-marijuana stance, because I just think we can come to an agreement somewhere else. But so much going on tonight. First, mind blown. Pete Kaliner, not a neo-Nazi. Pete, I've been listening to you for years. I don't know if I can listen anymore. This is messing up my whole night. Other than that, though, so yeah. When I told people that Kyle was beefing with Cassie in the party, there was actually like a bit of a commotion. We've had a 2.5-year thing going with Kyle. And I want to say, so Darren Staley's on here. Darren and I have been going back a little bit, comparing music, talking about some policies. Darren is, you know, my disdain is equal. It's the uniparty, the red or the blue side. If Darren got elected, I would have no problems, because I believe he's a good person who wants what's best for North Carolina. I think his ideas are completely wrong for North Carolina, but I also think if he saw that, he would change, because he's trying to help people. Kyle is the epitome of the, like, I don't know, the attention economy, trolling, just disgusting filth. And you know, there's some on both sides. You've got your Laura Loomers, you've got your JoJo from Jurors, and Brooklyn Dad Defiant. So Kyle attacked David Coatney and one other libertarian about taking, and I can't think of the name of those forgivable loans during COVID, but he just went after him unprovoked. And I went back at him, and he and I have a 2.5-year thing going. So I know Mike Ross was on here, and he was saying, you know, he's running for office and he's above it. I'm not above it. I make no claim to being, you know, I don't know, chivalrous or something. But he's gone after some of my friends. Kelly Mann wasn't on here. He went after Kelly. I'm going to drop the text back and forth in the chat. Kelly's a pretty woman. Kyle's a big guy. And I found a picture of a really, really big guy and a pretty woman on the beach, and it's an actual picture of Kelly rejecting Kyle. But before we get to that, he has a couple of tweets, and I just want to read these. Well, here's an example of Kyle and me going back and forth. This is from January 2023. He wrote, "I'm not leaving the arena, but rather turning my focus to more productive means of change." And I said, "By more productive means of change, do you mean an exercise routine?" Then there's the tweet after that. He said, "You call me fat a lot. You even called me fat today." But here's the ones I have. Okay, so here's a couple of tweets from Kyle that I saved, and this is the example of. I mean, unfortunately, he is a Democrat. He ran as a Democrat, so the Democrats own this. But I don't think he's representative of most of the Democrats. And this is the sort of contempt for the average person that someone. I mean, he's just a sad person. He's getting old. He's looking for fulfillment. I don't know what his motivation is except to spew hate. I will tell you that I think Pete mentioned Anderson Clayton had gone after him. I do have, connections at the high levels of both the Republicans and the Democrats, and they do not like him. They consider him a net negative. He causes problems. They wish he'd go away. But here's one he wrote on immigration. If a guy who can't speak any English, has one set of dirty clothes, and no skills or training can take your job, you're a loser. So think about that. One, that's his opinion of immigrants, apparently. Can't speak English, one set of dirty clothes, and no skills. But two, anyone who loses their job to an immigrant must be a loser. Then here's another one. Libertarianism relies on equal opportunity, which will never exist. It's a fairy tale. And then here's the key part. Free market capitalism is a predatory model predicated on domination. Like what? So he's anti-free market capitalism. And then right in the next one, and I didn't get it in time because he deleted it, but he wrote, the common good is greater than individual rights. And I was like, so you're actually a communist. Like, that's open communism. I have challenged him to debates. In my trolling of him, I challenged him to 25 contests, like a wrestling match, a chess match, bond, arm wrestling, a bunch of other things. But I've really been trying to get him on there to debate. And I will say one thing, Cassie, I know Eric Davis jumped to Kyle's defense. I think Eric didn't realize what was going on, but he did that with me. And I always engage in good faith at first. And when I invited Eric on my podcast, he came on. And in my opinion, I kicked his ass. He made the mistake of sticking with things I know really, really well. But Eric was trying to be genuine. He really wanted to engage. He really wanted to talk. It's I think so frustrating that the worst of the worst get the attention, and then people in parties are willing to allow them to maintain that attention or to spew the hate because it drives victories. And that's, I'm trying to find, there's one more tweet I want to read before I get off, because it speaks to exactly what his motivation is. Oh, here he said, I would like to remind all of the wonderful Dems out there that the goal is to win elections, not the moral high ground. Being right and losing is not going to help. That's insane to me. So again, we got Darren on here. I don't want to put Darren on the spot, but I strongly suspect that Darren would not win and give up his moral high ground. And further, his moral high ground is to help people. And so by winning, he would be attempting to help people, not hoard power. Kyle is the opposite. He sees it as a zero-sum game. He wants to dominate you. He wants control. He wants power. He hates you. He doesn't care how it affects people. And when he went after Cassie, like, yeah, we all got excited because we knew the Queen's Army was coming. But the fact of the matter is, he really does look down on you. He thinks you're worse than him. He thinks you're poor. He thinks you're uneducated. He thinks that because you don't have a library where he's dictating what books can and can't be in there, you must be dumb. And here's the truth. People like Kyle have a very weak core identity, a very low IQ, have never achieved anything, are looking at the end of their lives and dealing with the fact that their legacy is going to be nothing. And he's less than worthless. And this space has been amazing, but Cassie, you're doing awesome things. It's great to have you here. So many people here joining in, coming together. I don't know. Kyle's like, you stepped in dog shit. This space is wiping the dog shit off your shoe and then move on with a better shoe.
So I actually think that he knew nothing about me. He's clearly never scrolled through my content, never been to the blog, never seen the podcast. He knew nothing about me. And most influencers are rich girls. And so I think that he thought that he was coming after somebody who, grew up in a good old boy family. He had no idea who he was messing with when he did it. And I think that he thought that there was some sort of justification in that. And so whenever I pushed back and told the actual story, and, let him know, you can be sued for slander and lying. That's when he started going through and deleting things. And I think that speaks volumes, not only about the way that he sees the world, but the way that others see the world. And that's scary. Okay, guys, there's a lot of hands. It's getting late, so I'm going to hand the mic over to y'all, but please go fast, because there's like 3 or 4 more points that I want to get to. It's Sharon, No Quarter, and then Richard.
There, I'm happy to see Darren in here. Cassie, that's who I have messaged you about before, saying that I think he'd be a great guest on your podcast, and having him on his space to talk would be terrific.
I just want to let him know, whenever I said that earlier about nobody taking me up on it, I'm talking like I have reached out to about 30 Democrats. I wasn't talking about you.
He'd be a great, but he's the one that I've told you before is like, I think that's that because anyway, that's the person.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, No Quarter, go.
I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing I am on here, but above everybody's pictures, there's one of his tweets, and you could have not posted another tweet but this one, and it explains this guy to the T. And it's the one from 8/7/24. This is fascism. Elon Musk has created a Nazi platform advertisers hate it. They refuse to support his racist, sexist, totalitarian vision. That explains this guy up one side and down the other. The First Amendment, freedom of speech is okay if it's his freedom of speech, but your freedom of speech, no, we can't have that. No, we can't have anybody else voicing an opinion. It's just what we wanted to hear.
Yes, sir, I agree. Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Did you call on me, man? I apologize. You cut out.
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. No, he correctly epitomizes to me the type of person who comes down to North Carolina and actually, hates everyone and despises everyone outside of the metro areas. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter what race they are. He just despises everyone outside of the Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, and Charlotte area. That's about it.
Yep, I agree with that too. I think that anybody who's not, city born and, got that 4-year degree or, doctorate, he looks down on all of us. And I think that goes back to something that someone said much earlier in the conversation. And though people don't want to admit it, I think that hits the nail on the head as to why Southerners feel the way they do about transplants. And not all transplants, but we've all been through it. And people act like it doesn't happen, but it does. You'll be standing in line, and if you have an accent, you'll hear somebody talking ugly about you behind you. And of course, they're from, New Jersey, New York. You'll be, driving. My husband, I mean, we're not poor, not now, but he drives around in a beat up old truck. He loves that truck. That's his baby. It's a piece of crap. You pull up at a gas station and here's somebody with Connecticut plates that gets out and looks at you like you're white trash, because they don't understand our culture. And it happens to all of us. And then they think that we're mean because of the way we feel about them moving down. And I feel like Kyle is literally the epitome of why we feel the way that we do. Okay, so we're going to
Cass.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, and it's going to take 30 seconds. As somebody who, as former military, went all over the world, I never walked into Germany and looked at the people and went, oh, hey, you guys have to conform to me because this is the way we live things as Americans. I went in there and went, oh, well, in America, this would be okay, but here it's not. So I'm going to follow your rules. The whole adage of when in Rome is the truth. And this is the problem with these transplants that come down here because they want everybody to conform to them instead of them conforming to us when they choose to move here.
Yes. I mean, my favorite word. What's my favorite word? Assimilate. Come, by all means, come here, but assimilate. You know, if you don't assimilate, you are destroying our culture. Everything that brought you here goes away. Assimilate. I don't think that's too much to ask. And by the way, I want to toss this out there before I move on. Dan, if you're still in the room, just so you know, when I said that I would love to talk to you, I meant privately because I have stories that I would not tell publicly. Now, moving on. So my next thing is what is Kyle's connection to the Democrat Party today? So he owns a PAC called We Compete. His co-founders are Austin Clark and Dan Grunberg. I tried to find information on them. There was none to be found. The PAC was actually formed with a DC address. So there's not a whole lot of money going into it, you know, but this is something that could potentially come something. And that worries me. There's people out there who support this man enough to tie their names to him. Not only that, but go through his follower list. Like, I'm blocked, I can't do it. But go through his follower list and see how many politicians and people who are running follow this man. That is my problem right there. I understand that he has no power under, and I agree. Like, I feel like I basically stepped in a pile of crap. I mean, it's true. But the problem isn't just what he's saying and what he's doing. It's the connections he has and the people who are listening to what he has to say. And to me, that's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And, you know, it's not just a problem on the left. We can pretend it is, but it's not. It's happening on the right, too. And if we're going to fight one, we have to fight the other. You know, it can't just be, oh, the left is bad and this is just the leftist. No, it's not. No, it's not. I have people that I adore here on X who do nothing but get angry and flip out every day. They're not, you know, trashing whole portions of the state, but I'm just saying it's happening in both places. How do we stop that from happening?
Well, Cass, this is what I was saying earlier, and I know you didn't call on anybody, but there was some dead air, so here we go. This is what I was saying earlier about the whole Kyle isn't a serious candidate. He's just, from a military perspective, he's making a foray into a red area, hoping he can drum up money for his PAC. And then later on, there is going to be a bigger, larger, more quote unquote fascinating Democrat that's going to roll in, promise a whole bunch of stuff, and try and turn the western part of NC blue. This is what they do. They're like a virus. They spread out, they take over, they nibble at the edges, and then eventually they gain a foothold. And once they gain traction, trying to take that traction back is almost impossible. And part of that is, and this also part of this also goes into gentrification, because enough people move into the western side of NC, you know, these Silicon Valley people, these people who find the land cheap. It kind of reminds me of Beetlejuice. You remember when the couple died and the rich, weird, artistic married couple moved in, and they wanted to invite all their friends and tell them about how great the town was and how folksy and how cheap everything was. This is what we're dealing with.
I'm so glad. I mean, you said it for me. I was going to say, you know, that goes back to the gentrification thing. And I feel like that's exactly why it's happening. There's been no interest in Western North Carolina in 400 years. And now all of a sudden, everybody wants to own a summer home in Western North Carolina. If I wanted to move home right now, a tiny little house that just, you know, 10 years ago would have cost, I don't know, 120 grand. Today is 500 grand in my hometown. Are you serious? Like, that's basically like saying I can never, ever move home. Never. And that's why. it's gentrification, and I almost feel like it's a political move, like it's on purpose. Pete, go ahead.
I appreciate it. All right, I've got a lot of notes. I'm going to run through them as fast as I can, but I think I want to start because this is sort of an overarching theme, which is change, and that it is the only constant. And I've heard people, about transplants, and as a native New Yorker, I grew up there, but I left at age 18 and I never went back. And to the assimilation point, I feel like I've tried to assimilate because I preferred it here, and I preferred the people here, I preferred the culture here, and so I stayed. But a couple things to kind of keep in mind, you've got, like, in Asheville, the Biltmore House, and the entire village that got built up all around it that everybody loves. That guy was a transplant, right? There has always been there's always been a draw in Western North Carolina because of the beauty, and that actually is one of the reasons why it's really expensive too, is because it's so beautiful, but also not a lot of buildable land, terrible local policy, particularly with the Asheville city government that does not allow for more construction of housing, particularly. Bad infrastructure, really bad decisions based on politics and political ideology, but also a lot of the land is protected, right? So there's less to build on, and that's just the nature of economics. So there is that component to it. But like my wife and I, we experienced that very thing with the high cost of living in Western North Carolina when we tried to find houses there too. We were looking at trailers for $300K. It was insane. Another thing to keep in mind that the political parties we are in a realignment of the political parties. There was a discussion earlier about what I like to refer to as hashtag not all Democrats. And this realignment is I don't know how it shakes out. By the way, I have no idea how it's going to look, but the Republican Party is becoming more of a working class kind of a party. I don't know what that portends for them, but that's what it seems like to me, and that's why there's been this migration, and it is a but more so economic transition, I think, that's occurring. I call the Democrat Party the Elysium Party. If you've ever seen the movie, there's this really, it's basically a bifurcated split there where you've got really rich and then really poor, and that's sort of making up the contours of the Democrat Party now. And when I talk politics, and I'm trying not to go too far down the political hole here, but I make a point to distinguish between leftists or Marxist or neo-Marxists, right? But leftists versus liberals and Democrats. There are not a lot of those left, though, in the Democrat Party. There was a book that I would recommend. Obviously, it's written with certain I would say liberal leanings. Rob Christensen, former columnist for the Raleigh News and Observer, whatever you may think of him, he wrote a book called The Paradox of North Carolina Politics, and it traces the roots and the history of all of the politics of the state going back, 200, 300 years, whatever it is. There's always been this strain of populism versus business interests, always. So that's not going to change because it's embedded in our culture, and it's not just North Carolina. And I think that's kind of informing the transition at the national level of the parties as well. It's why you saw Republicans take control of the state legislature for the first time in 2010. After 130 years, whatever it was. There is also, I hear a lot of people discussing the different parts of the state and who looks down on whom. And my experience, just from sort of an observation standpoint, as a guy who came from South Carolina up into North Carolina, and there were people that denigrated South Carolina when I got up here, when they thought I was from Rock Hill, and they looked down on South Carolina. South Carolinians look down on North Carolinians. Southerners look down on Northerners, and Northerners look down on Southerners. And so there's always going to, I remember I called a state lawmaker's office to get an interview, and the legislative assistant said to me, "Oh, you're from Charlotte, the great state of Mecklenburg County." That is a very prevalent thought about everybody that lives in Mecklenburg County. I can take you to places that are within a quarter mile of where I am right now that you would think you are in any other mobile home park in any other part of the state, because there are still trailer parks in Mecklenburg County, as much as maybe some charlatans might not want to acknowledge that. The last, sorry, not the last, when talking about this guy Kyle, and I try not to talk about individual people so much as ideas, but I think he fits a mold that is a grifter. You mentioned his super PAC or his PAC that he has created, and that's a grift, right? That's the purpose. In politics, you have the PAC, and now you're trying to build this stuff up. I do believe that I recognize the incursion aspect of it as well. The action is the reaction, right? That's Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. The action is in the reaction. And so when he goes into these Twitter feeds and he attacks people, it's to induce the reaction that then he can use to paint all people of the different political, opposition as that thing, hence the calling me a neo-Nazi. And I do find it also kind of ironic that, he went after Cassie, you as an influencer, when that is precisely what he is attempting to be himself, right? But to influence in a different way. He's trying to be that very thing. There was, on the incursion into the Western North Carolina areas, we are already seeing that. Asheville, it's sort of broken containment and leftists, and that is predominantly what is in Asheville, I can tell you. That's the local political movement that animates the Democrat Party now, which there's reasons for that. It was always kind of Democrat-controlled, and the Democrat Party has now been taken over from the inside by the far left and at a structural level. And so when the Democrats were trying to stiff-arm Republicans in Western North Carolina, and they did that through patronage, not hiring people that were Republicans. I have a family member who could not get a job in state government unless he registered as a Democrat. And then, of course, they had to donate to the Democrat Party candidates. So this is embedded in all of the politics. And while they were trying to guard against the Republicans, they never saw their flank, the left flank, and they got taken over. And now you're seeing this movement into Hendersonville. They've jumped over into Henderson County, and they're trying to, I think they've actually won a couple seats on that Hendersonville City Council. And then the last thing I would just note is that always keep in mind, and Kyle Parrish is a good example of it, that a lot of people who are of this leftist political ideology, they are, in my experience, generally speaking, and not in all cases, hashtag not all leftists, but generally speaking, they're intellectually flabby because they haven't had to defend their positions, because their positions are the acceptable positions to hold. And so they can say all of these things in their circles, and nobody ever pushes back on them because they all agree, and they end up trying to kind of one-up each other. And it's how you get more and more extreme positions, because in order to prove that you are the best and the most loyal to the ideology, you have to go there. You have to get more and more extreme. And so without the pushback, because the culture rewards their position in ways that it does not reward conservatism or libertarianism, they end up becoming soft, and they can't defend. That's why you see Kyle running away from arguments that are logical or philosophical, because they cannot. They have no experience in doing so. And that's one of the things that you will find. And if you realize it when you're seeing it, and look, I have sympathy for a lot of people on the left, because I couldn't defend their political ideology. It's indefensible. It's illogical to me. And so when I try to ask them to defend it and they cannot, I kind of have some level of pity for them, because, wow, like, you just have these ideas and you don't know why, and you can't defend them. And this is why I always say unchallenged ideas are easy to hold. And they hold them, and then they get challenged, and it happens on the right as well. But the whole culture isn't sort of rotating around conservatism as an animating philosophy. It is the left that controls the institutions at this point. And so they are insulated. And then when anybody kind of breaks through, they're usually left, stammering in their arguments. And that's what I think leads to guys like Kyle deleting all of his comments because he can't defend them on a rational basis. And I'll leave it there. I apologize for going so long.
You are so sweet. You really don't have to apologize. I do want to clarify something that I said earlier, though, because I didn't mean for it to come across so mean. Like, I know, I mean, half of my life was spent in Wilmington. And so, of course, that everybody knows that's transplant central, you know, just like Charlotte and Raleigh. And so a vast majority of my friends are from up north. But my point was, is there's a huge difference in people like you who come down and they assimilate and they love the people here and they love the place and they cherish it. And people like Kyle who come here, they look down on us. They have no problem saying they look down on us and wanting to pretend like we need them here. You know what I mean?
Totally
And
agree. I totally agree.
A lot of hurt feelings come from that, you know, and I feel like if you're going to move here, love it. If you don't love it, then leave it. You know, like, you don't have to be here if you don't want to be, but don't come here and treat us that like we're less than. There's not a whole lot of people from down south moving up north and treating people up north the way that we get treated down here, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's a guy, actually, you probably have seen him in the North Carolina politics hashtag. He constantly is talking about how he's trying to find a place to move to, and he's throwing it out there like, I can't live in this Republican hellhole any longer. And I keep offering him suggestions on where to go. But he still stays. He's been saying it for like 2 years. I don't understand why he just won't leave. Like, if you don't leave, we can't miss you.
I got booted, so I totally missed what was just said. I'm so sorry. Okay, we're gonna move on. So I think it's Dark and then
Eric.
Mr. Bishop.
No, it's Eric.
Oh,
it's
is it?
Eric
Okay.
and then me.
Okay, all right. Eric and then Dark and then Mr. Bishop.
Okay, I just joined this. I'm getting used to Twitter Spaces, and I don't know, like your name says, who the hell is Kyle Parrish? But I live in Wake County, and it's getting unreal around here. Like, who is buying all of this land up from the people selling their farms and stuff? It's got to be BlackRock, right? And they don't care about the roads. They're trying to build the interstates, and they're changing everything to another interstate just to get federal money. And I understand, like, I'm like with y'all. It's like these people come in, like, from the north. They think they're going to change stuff, but they, like Mark Levin used to say, he used to call them locusts. He's like, they come down here, and then they keep voting the same way from the ways that they fled from. And I just don't get it, and I'll never drive on a toll road. That's one thing I will never do. Build them all. Build all the toll roads you want to. I will never drive on them. And like I said, I'm new to this, so thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome, hon. All right. Dark, I don't know who's next. I forgot that fast. I'm tired.
I was on. You're good. No, I absolutely agree with Pete. But one of the things that we have to do, and Pete kind of danced around it, but not actually hit it, is we need to think about politics in North Carolina like it's a battle in World War II. You have to look at the way they behave. You have to look at the way they push in with incursions, like with this idiot Kyle. And you have to say, because here's what happens. It's a two-pronged attack, okay? They push a Democrat candidate in who riles things up, gets people thinking a certain way. Then a whole bunch of civilians come in who just start buying up land, and oh, isn't this so beautiful? And look at these landscapes. And then they start gentrifying everything. And then suddenly, what used to be a red area that was like, leave our stuff alone, now becomes, we want to vote with this new guy or new woman, if you will, because they're promising things. They're going to make things progressive. They're going to make us feel better. And that's the reality of it. And this is what they do. They do it in they're doing it in every single red and purple state in the country. And I'm not saying there's like some weird you know, galactic empire thing that's directing them like, you guys go here, you guys go here. I'm saying this is what's happening because with the advent of technology, everybody is moving, being able to work remote. RTP, I've watched it for the last 12 years change from this down home, because I live outside of Raleigh, this down home country feel where, you could literally drive 20 minutes in any direction and find a farm and see cows and horses and other livestock. And I don't know, for me, I felt comforted by it. I was like, yeah, I'm at home, I'm in nature. And now, like, every corner has got, 5-story apartment units on it. It's the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my life. And the only thing I can say about it is this is literally watching them take over and thinking, hey, it's going to be okay. We have our roots. No, our roots aren't enough. We need to push back, and we just don't. And whether it's because of tax money, whether it's because of land purchases, whether it's because of, tax income, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're watching all of our spaces being taken over by people who don't have our heritage, our interest, or anything in the place of first, period.
It's really funny that you bring that up. And I'm going to say something that a lot of people may not agree with here, but North Carolina used to be a lot more conservative than it is now. Don't get me wrong. We've always had a kind of nice even split, but even our Democrats were more conservative than they were in other places. But it's our fault. I went into a space, this was probably months ago. It was someone else's space. And I asked somebody who was running, what are you doing to protect our culture? What are you doing to make sure that our way of life doesn't change to the point where we have to flee to Georgia or Mississippi to live the kind of life there that we used to be able to live in North Carolina? And there was no answer. It was all about bringing in big new corporations that we all know are going to be hiring people who are from out of state. And it was all, you know what I mean? And I was like, how does that benefit the people who live here? Are you going to ensure, or is there going to be some kind of deal that makes sure that, the people who are living in that area actually get those jobs and they're not imported from somewhere else, from California and Illinois and New York and New Jersey? Like, what are we doing to protect what we actually have left here in North Carolina? And there was no answer. Mr. Bishop, go ahead.
I gotta learn how to operate this thing. I about turned it off when I was trying to hit the mic button. I've enjoyed listening to you guys very much. Cassie, you set up my comments here very well. And by the way, every time you turn your microphone on, I hear crickets or tree frogs or something in the background, and it's sort of a peaceful feeling. It's really marvelous. I came into the space because I just happened upon a Pete Kaliner tweet, and I saw the familiar purple surrounding, and so I have enormous respect for Pete. And as I've listened to all of you tonight, especially Pete, though at the end, well, no, it applies to a lot of you. I'm just amazing to me how much you can think and talk at 11 o'clock at night. It's like dangerous for me to be commenting at this time of night, but I appreciate the discussion. I really don't know much about Kyle Parrish. I've kind of seen a little bit of him. I've seen Pete's comments on him. Cassie, I'm fascinated by what has happened. I'm afraid I came into the conversation too late to know it too well. But I would say this: I don't personally believe that there are many bad faith, unpleasant, sanctimonious, awful people around. Pete, I think about a frequent guest on your show who I've known for years, who's very Southern. I'm not going to name him, but he's a lawyer in Charlotte, and he's the most bad faith interlocutor with you. And I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, and many of the folks who are listening to know your show will know as well. I think he's just as bad as this guy Kyle Parrish, probably, and he's a Southerner. I'll also say, so I'm delighted for all the good people who will come. I know it is disruptive, uh, and there are things that change around us. But to answer the question you last asked, Cassie, what are we doing about it? What I am doing about it is that's what I mean. The immediate task at hand for me in running for Attorney General is to restore law and order, to respect law, to show reverence for and put my whatever I can put behind the notion that we'll support our constitutional system. We're not going to give way to the sort of progressive lunacy of tossing out law and replacing it with lawfare that's politicized uh, and used as an attack weapon in a way that's just completely at odds with everything that fundamentally this nation was built upon. It's led to the flourishing of this country. That, but my longer term and bigger objective is I'd like to see North Carolina become more like Florida, less like Virginia, less like California, New York, and Illinois. And it requires unapologetically standing for the values that we know have made the country successful. And so I guess I want to add also thank you to Betty much earlier and Stephen for commenting favorably about what I'm seeking to do. But it is very much, as it turns out, about what you're talking about tonight. And I think the answer to that is to repay uh, sanctimony and horrific condescension and bad faith and nastiness from someone like you've been discussing tonight with showing who we know we are. And I think the result of it must be, if we're successful, that we will draw people here because the laboratory of democracy, the states, are very much dividing. Why I'm leaving Congress to do this is because I don't think the answers are in Washington. The answers are here. And we build a community and we demonstrate what works. And people will come here. And I hope the balance turns out to be the people most eager to come here will be the people who are prepared, Cassie, as you said, to assimilate and to support um, and join us in expressing our values uh, the way um, the way we're trying to do. And so I think with that, hopefully the Kyle Parishes of the world just live in their miserable gutter and attack and assault people and seek to undermine what they don't have themselves, frankly. But I've been honored to listen to you guys and learn from you, and so thanks for that. Thanks for inviting me to speak. I've spoken too long. God bless you all.
Hey, can I ask a question of Dan real quick?
Certainly, I'm glad to answer a question.
How do you feel about the Second Amendment?
It is it is a fundamental constitutional right to keep and bear arms. I think it is one of the attacks on it politically and frankly, it's almost lost in the late 1960s. Uh, was a horrific betrayal of a fundamental truth that the founders understood. It is one of the things that makes the United States most unique among nations, and one of the best opportunities to prevent tyranny from settling here. And so I'm devoted to it, but I'm devoted to every right in the Constitution, and I think we have to defend them all.
Fair play, sir.
Well, Mr. Bishop, I think you just got my vote. But I would still love to pick your brain at some point about medical marijuana. I have a very personal reason for wanting that. So if you're ever interested in speaking to me, send me a message and I would love to talk to you about it privately.
I'll be happy to do that, Cassie. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I'm going to go with Beverly. I'm sorry, Eric. I know your hand was up, but Beverly hasn't spoken yet.
Problem. I'm just here chilling out. I don't even know who the hell's running over here. Sounds like a Western North Carolina thing. I'm Eastern. Wake County born and bred.
Good. I'd like to speak about Wake County. Thank you, Cassie. I moved back from 30 years in Los Angeles in 2017. I grew up in Swannanoa and now reside in Wake County. And I'm so sorry I missed the previous part of your show because I was at Western Wake Republican Club raising money for our candidates. And thank you, Dan Bishop, for speaking. I'm so happy I got to catch you. I just wanted to plug and say a lot of people are asking, what can I do? What can I do? But we have 17 days of early voting coming up, and we have our sign up geniuses starting to fill up. And I just want to implore and encourage each and every one of you to give 2 to 3 hours of your time to staff those early voting polls or on election day and hand out candidate information. That's the only way to help voters understand who the candidates are and who to vote for. And we probably raised tonight, we had so much fun and I'm tired, but I wanted to take a chance and see if you were still talking. And we, we we had we had Alan Swain and Scott Lasseter and a lot of candidates at our function tonight. It was a disco dance, and I'm old and I'm probably tired and won't be able to walk tomorrow, but I had a great time. So I just really hope that I can encourage. And Wake County hasn't lost yet. We did so well 2 years ago. I've only been involved in this for 3 years, but we really did a lot of good by getting the amount of people out to vote. We might not have won all of our elections, but because of the amount of people we got out to vote, we were able to carry the judicial candidates. We were able to make some big wins, and I hope we can make some big wins again this year. And I followed Kyle a little bit, and he's not a very nice man. And I think that our conservative people have a lighter heart than leftists. They seem so angry and just kind of full of rage. And I'm just really happy to be back in my home state. Sorry I missed Trump's rally in Asheville. But I'm just really happy to be back here and happy to just share my experience and with everyone and hope you all can give a little bit of your time coming up in November. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Sharon, go ahead, honey. Oh, wait. Yeah, Sharon, go ahead.
I wanted to tell you about something I think you'll appreciate in Apex is I too am concerned about the downtown area being gentrified. I don't want that to happen. I want my kids to grow up with around a whole mix of socioeconomic people and races and just because we're just a big happy family down here towards the downtown. And we've still got our cute Main Street here, and the town does a great job of having like the 150th celebration of the town. They did a celebration and set up historical information and artifacts and that sort of thing, so people could learn about the history of the town. But there's a group of us that think that affordable housing is important, and affordable housing meaning what, like a third of your income, what a person can afford, and that there should be a variety in protecting. We're working on protecting a certain area, 2 areas of downtown, and it's through it's volunteers through a few churches and Habitat for Humanity. And we've been gathering signatures to ask the town council to so that the areas are zoned to protect the people that are already in these areas. So those sort of steps are available in your city or towns. If you work with your neighbors to make sure that, other neighbors are protected.
I really wish that they had done something like that in Wilmington. It really bothers me to go downtown and everything is now lily white in areas that were once thriving Black communities. And, a lot of those people in those areas were living in poverty. Don't get me wrong, the areas needed to be cleaned up. I just feel like investing in Black businesses and doing different things could have led to a much better outcome than what ended up happening. And so that frustrates me. Okay, I'm going to do a couple little announcements really quick, and then I'm going to take the last few hands. So I think if Steven is up to it, and he said he would, but next week, I think we're going to do the Marxism thing for anybody who's interested. And then also Darren Stanley sent me a message, and he said that he would love to come on the podcast. So I'm super excited about that. And then I also have something else really crazy happened recently. A production company from here in North Carolina reached out to me. I have replied and I'm waiting to hear back from them. So now I've had a director contact me, and now I've had a production company contact me. So I am totally being, scouted. So things are going to start happening. I don't know what yet, but good things are coming. All right. So I don't know whose hand was up first, guys. I'm so sorry. Dark, do you know? Were you watching?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Eric and then Pete and then Steven.
All right. Awesome. All right. So, Eric, you're on, hun.
Okay, what I was gonna say, like I said, I grew up in Wake County. I was born in Rex Hospital, the old Rex, and I've seen Hillsborough Street turn from a great place to go down to where now, like you talk about the corporatism and building sky rises and all that mess. It's I don't even want to go down it no more. First giveaway is a roundabout. Once you see a roundabout, it's over. And I do flooring, so I drive all over the state, and I will tell you, I would much rather go east. Like the day I went to Mooryock, almost like it's above Elizabeth City. And I almost want to feel like I want to move out there just to get away from all these people coming out here taking over our damn city. And I will say, I can't believe that Trump got the crowd he did in Nashville. That was amazing. But we just got to keep these people. They're invading our spaces, and if we call them out, we're called racist. And even if it gets white people, we do. Oh, you don't want to move on. Innovation, blah blah blah. No, I want to keep it like it used to be. And around here, all these people, the old people are dying off. The kids are selling off their farms, and then, like I said earlier, Black Rock buying it all up. They're building subdivisions all over the place. They're not fucking making a better road or anything. And I'm like, who's got the money to buy these damn houses? Is what I'm worried about or confused about. It's unreal. I don't know. I'm like I said, I was born in Wake County. I want to die in Wake County, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to push me out because I can't afford to live in Wake County.
Hey, Steven. You're
Hold on
asking.
1 second. Hold on 1 second. I think it's really funny that he mentioned roundabouts because they have plopped a roundabout down in Canton, North Carolina. And if y'all have never been to my hometown has about, I want to say maybe 4 fast food restaurants, maybe 3 stoplights, There's nothing there. Okay. There's no possible way that you need a roundabout. And now there is a roundabout in Canton, North Carolina. Okay. Go ahead.
Real quick. Hey, Stephen, or not Stephen, sorry, I apologize. Eric, the reason why you're asking who can afford it is because RTP, the Raleigh Triangle Perimeter, is becoming the Silicon Valley of the South. All of these people that are making $400,000 or $500,000, $600,000 a year are moving to North Carolina, and they can afford to literally pay cash for houses. There was a friend of mine that was trying to buy a house because he wanted to move his mother-in-law down after her husband died from New York, and he literally got outbid by $175,000 for a house. This is what we're dealing with. This is what transplants do. All right, Cassie, you've got Pete. It should be Stephen, then Betty, then No Quarter.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I do want to go back to something real quick because I just remembered that I wrote this down because of Rob. Rob, you brought up Eric Davis, and he was actually on my checklist of something that I wanted to talk about. He actually created a TikTok video about Kyle's initial post and about my comments on it. And the beginning of it is so belittling that I stopped watching it. And he basically says that I took it wrong. I don't understand how you take it wrong. That this guy literally was belittling all of Western North Carolina because of churches, Trump signs, you know what I mean? Like, and saying that we were the problem. You know what I mean? And Eric coming to his defense, that's exactly what I was talking about when I said that this kind of mindset has now become acceptable in the mainstream, and that is not okay. Okay, that was it. Pete, go ahead, and then No Quarter, and then Betty, and then I think I'll get Gene, and then we're gonna close out.
Right, and so I just wanted to first off, just thank you for the invite and let me be a part of this tonight. I enjoyed it, and hearing all of the different people. I just would point out, it kind of feels like radio. I mean, I'm not trying to denigrate Twitter here, but it does have very radio vibes to it. The whole Twitter Spaces thing. But you asked, and I felt like I forgot to answer your question when you asked, what can we do? And I think you're doing it already. This is what you do. You participate. You participate in the public square. You participate in the discussions. You read about issues. You learn more about people and philosophies, and you show up, right? 90% of life is showing up. And yes, this is a Twitter space, but this is this. People think that, oh, well, Twitter's not real life, and that's true, but it punches way above its weight class because of the people that are on Twitter. The people that are on Twitter, media, politicians. I mean, you had examples in this very space tonight. And so it influences what gets covered, how it gets covered, and you see that when you read stories that'll quote people on Twitter, random people that they just quote in news stories, because it's a lot of reporters are lazy and it's just easy to grab the quotes. But you're doing it, you're participating, you're showing up, and I always say that if good and competent people don't participate and don't volunteer, and I know it takes a lot of time, right? Tonight, 3 hours here, right? But it's important, and if good, competent people don't volunteer their time and their expertise, then you end up being governed by bad, incompetent people, because they will take advantage. They're not doing anything else. They're gonna step into that vacuum, and so I think you're doing it, and I appreciate again the invitation, and I had a good time tonight, and I'll keep I'll back you when I can on Twitter if I see it. If I see it on the NC Politics hashtag, that's where I usually am doing most of the wet work that I do over there.
Oh, thank you so much, Pete. Thank you for showing up tonight. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey,
all
Cass.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a big ask here. Would you please take Betty? Because reasons.
Yes. I'm gonna take everybody. I'm gonna take everybody. Wait, let me ask this: who's gonna be the shortest? New, like throw up a heart. Whoever's just got like a quick little comment to make. All right, Betty, go ahead, sweetheart. And then no quarter.
I fooled you. I may not talk in a short while here. No, I'm kidding. First of all right, quickly, I'll just blurt out some things. Wake County seems to be well represented on here tonight. And I heard, I think it's Beverly on the site with Margot, I believe, the other day, because you were talking about what you all were doing in Western Wake County. So it's good to see one or two familiar faces. Pete, I remember Rod Christensen, was that his name? My family was friends with the Daniels family. He came over to my house, my parents, well, after my father died, there were some, of course, friends and family were coming by the house. And Frank Daniels, who died not too long ago, came in, and my mother looked at him and she said, I am so sick and tired of the news and the Sunday paper being full of nothing but advertisements. I can hardly find anything to read. And he said, well, that's the way we make our money. But he was always a nice guy. And his wife, Julia Daniels, went to Converse College down in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where I went, and she was a trustee. Julia did a lot of wonderful things for our state. Also, North Carolina School of Arts. I think she was president of the Board of Trustees up there in Winston-Salem. So I want to read his book because what you were saying, it is so true, more or less, that we've stayed the same, but we've changed somewhat too. Okay, everybody's going to dump on me, but I have to say this. Raleigh was the little country town. It just had our state government. I can remember when China opened up, and every single state was sending its folks over there to try to get them to come to their state. They promised them cheaper land. They promised probably no corporate taxes for a while. Um, we had the furniture industry, which unfortunately I think has now died out. That was a wonderful thing that High Point and Lenore, North Carolina, those towns had. And we had great furniture, and people were buying it from all over the place. And the furniture mart that people came from all over the world, I think. That's no longer there. But North Carolina and the Raleigh area needed some outside corporate investment. And Terry Sanford, the Democrat, is the one that I think had the idea, along with some very rich people from Chapel Hill who had money, who started the Research Triangle, or that the idea of it, who knew it was going to grow so big. And it has brought way too many people to this area. You have to go out to Anger to buy a house. Um, Unless, and many families grew up right here in Raleigh, have stayed here. And in our neighborhood itself, we have had to put in a lot of money because there was a developer who bought a home that was on a big piece of property. The lady, I think, did not know what she was doing, but planned to put up, I've forgotten how many townhomes or condos that were going to cost $1 million a piece. And it was going to ruin this neighborhood that was started in the 1920s. So everyone got behind it. We got a good lawyer, and we stopped the city council, which was all mostly Democrat. Developers here are the ones that are running things, and we've got to stop them. So anybody who remembered North Hills, it's not the same anymore. That's where people are getting so angry and wishing for things to be like it was in the past. But you can't stop progress, but we can certainly get our friends and neighbors who appreciated what we had to start voting Republican again, if nothing else. And some of them are Democrats, lifelong Democrats, and I think they've got their eyes closed. Gosh, I forgot the one other thing I was going to say. But, well, oh, Dan, and I don't think he's on here anymore. I loved everything he said, But I don't want North Carolina to be like Florida unless we do away with the state income tax. Otherwise, no. I'm hearing people in Florida saying how horrible it is to try to get around anywhere with all the snowbirds coming down there and tying up traffic. I do not want us to be Florida. So, anyway, I want us to stay the Tar Heel State. And did you all see what I put down there in the purple? We've always said that North Carolina was the valley of humility between two mountains of conceit, that being Virginia and South Carolina. We have always been humble. Thanks. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. And I actually agree with you. If you don't know, I'm kind of like the North Carolina culture warrior. And so I don't want my state turning into something that I don't recognize. And that's kind of how all of this started. So I'm with you 100% on that. Dark, I need you here. I have no idea. I think it's no quarter and then Jean.
I'm here on. I got you. I got you.
Okay.
It's no quarter. Then Janine. Then, and these last two are going to be a toss up because they kind of popped up at the same time. Boston Girl and Eric.
All right. Yep.
Oh, real quickly, I don't remember who it was that's talking about the roundabouts, but if any of you have TikTok, go on TikTok and pull up Roberta Road Roundabout. This is a roundabout between Harrisburg and Concord, and they put it in just right up the street from a middle school, and a guy has a Ring doorbell camera, and he has phenomenal footage of people trying to negotiate this roundabout. I mean, some of it is honestly Dukes of Hazzard, Bo and Luke Duke. I mean, it is, some of it is hilarious. But if you have TikTok, go on there. It's called Roberta Road Roundabout. That's Roberta Road Roundabout, and it's well worth a watch. I don't know how many videos are on there, but when they first built it, he had that Ring doorbell camera, and he's kind of catty cornered from it. I mean, you will see some wild crap.
Will you pretty please drop that in the purple pill for me? Like, because I know I'm going to forget the name of that, but I totally have TikTok. Don't really use it yet, but if you'll drop it, I'm going to look it up.
Okay, I'll do it. I don't use it very much, but I'll look on here real quick and see if it's still up there.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, guys, we're going to try to go quickly through this because this girl's getting tired. Jean, you're up next.
No, Boston Girl's up next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Boston Girl, you're up next.
Hi, North Carolina. I just want to thank you. I'm from Massachusetts. It's a horrible, horrible left-leaning state. I'm probably the only person on my street with a Trump sign. So it's kind of tough to live here. But my son moved down there probably about 4 years ago. Started in Asheville, interesting place, and then ended up in, I think it's Columbia. Anyways, he assimilated really, really well down there. I visited and I was like blown away. Walked into a grocery store, couldn't find something. The people are so polite down there. And I can tell you, you guys are blessed to have that world down there. And I hope you continue to fight, 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 and keep your North Carolina the place that it is and should continue to be. I guess, but the only advice I would say is you have to really start on the local level and keep the North Carolinians in the, school committees, the whatever it is. Just keep going and do not take the bullshit. We're all getting infiltrated everywhere, and our world is changing. But you have a beautiful world down there, and basically saved my son's life. It's a wonderful place. He actually got to buy a house before the boom happened, and I couldn't be more happier for him. I miss him, not being here. If I could move down there, I would too. I probably should move down there, But I know you guys don't like so many transplants, but I see what you're going through. But thank you, North Carolina, and please stay strong and fight, fight, fight.
Oh, you are so sweet. And I tell you what, if you want to come here, just assimilate. And I promise all the locals will, well, most of the locals will welcome you with open arms. Okay, Eric, and then Steve. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah,
Hey, Cass,
Eric
hold
and then
on.
Steven. Okay.
Hold on, Cass. Grab Janine real quick because I give deference to.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. All right. Jean, go ahead, babe.
Thank you, you guys. North Carolina, my home from birth till almost 60 years old, you guys, next month. But I put something in the bubble I wanted to bring awareness to. Um, I know this isn't the topic. However, we do have a convicted murderer serving life who escaped in Orange County, Hillsborough, this week. They've been searching for him for this. Today was the third day. They have essentially stopped searching and are going on tips. Okay. They searched like 1,300 acres, about a 5-mile radius, and it is now turned over to what used to be the Department of Corrections. It's a new agency I was not aware of. It's called DAC, Department of Adult Correction now. It's a separate agency. And when you pull up their website, you're going to be amazed at how many people they have listed as escapees. So they have, it seems to be a roughly 50% success rate in capturing them. This guy was convicted of murder, serving life, you guys. So they've said he has absolutely nothing to lose. So please just be safe out there. God bless you all.
Thank you, ma'am. And I did not know that. So I will share that tomorrow so that everybody who follows me will know. That's scary. Okay, so I think it's Eric and then Steven. Am I right, Dark?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, regarding that case you just spoke of, yeah, he killed a baby girl, a 1-year-old baby girl, and he got out. I think it was in Chapel Hill and fled, but kind of forgot what brought it up. Made me forget my train of thought, but I love North Carolina. I've grown, like I said, I've grown up here my whole life, and it's kind of sad to see them trying to take over. And I, I don't know these toll roads, and I know you. I guess y'all Western North Carolina, because I don't know who the hell Kyle Parrish is, but I know Raleigh, and whoever was in Raleigh. If you ever get a chance to vote for Paul Fitz, I went to school with him. He's straight up. He ran for Raleigh mayor a couple of times, but of course he lost because he's not in the damn cabal. But we all got to stick together and not let them overrule us. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm voting for Mark Robinson and I'm voting for Trump. And I don't know how that feels in this party, but that's who I'm going with. And I'm out with that. And
thank you.
East Carolina is the best.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. All right, Steven, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I got a couple notes, but I'll try to run through them quick. The first was that, Sharon had mentioned, I believe, some effort in Apex regarding housing. I'd love to hear more about that at some point. Some of you may know I'm up here in Wake County. I do some independent journalism focused on local stories. But I think fundamentally, the laws of supply and demand are pretty much undefeated. So ultimately, if you have this huge demand coming in, any limitation on supply is just gonna keep jacking the prices up. It's not really much of a long term solution. So someone had mentioned, these corporations that they're bringing in with incentives, and one thing, I'm not a big fan of incentives as on the whole, incentives to bring businesses in from other states. But one thing I think they sort of do right is that their requirements is to, okay, you have to, there's a target, you have to hire this many North Carolina residents, North Carolina citizens for, to get this incentive. But I don't believe it has to be people who are in North Carolina before the incentive was issued. So I believe they can fulfill the requirement just by, as long as the people move to North Carolina, then they fulfill this requirement. And so I think, if you looked at the number of jobs created by the Research Triangle compared to the number of people who have moved to the area, I think you would find that, there might not have been much of a net benefit to the residents of North Carolina, not the new residents, but the old residents, other than people who own land and have been able to sell it for enormous profits. And I think someone mentioned the idea of you can't stop progress, and I that's only true to some extent, because if we look across the country, things progress in very different ways in different places. And I think one thing we should definitely keep in mind is that, like, if your children can't afford to be part of the same community that you're growing up in, we should consider that a definite failure. If you can't leave something to your children, then it's not really your community, it's just some place you're passing through. And I think we're unfortunately seeing a lot of that, where it's changing so quickly that we're not seeing organic growth where North Carolinians are having children and we're leaving the state to them. Instead, we're leaving the state to people who are coming in from all over the place, and basically bringing their values and whatnot with them. In terms of the escape murderer, which people just brought up, I'm not optimistic that they're going to catch him. He was brought to the UNC hospital for treatment. That's when he escaped. But he happened to have been sentenced for a murder that was committed in Chapel Hill. So I suspect that he's gone to ground. So he's probably not just, wandering around still in his orange jumpsuit and leg chains. I suspect if they haven't already caught him, he's probably met up with some old acquaintances, and I'm not too optimistic about that.
Stephen, that might be my most favorite comment ever, not the last bit, but where you were talking about, progress happens in different ways, and I 100% agree with that, and I cannot lie and say that I don't feel a little bit invaded. I try to be welcoming to all my transplants. I try to let them know that I appreciate them, especially the ones who come here and they assimilate and they love it here. But when you're talking about the magnitude of which it's happening, I mean, my mama's from Wilmington. I was born in Wilmington, even though I spent my early years in Canton. And when I go home, there's no Southern accents anymore. I'm literally like, I've been standing in crowd before and somebody asks me where I'm from and I'll say here. And they're like, no, where? And I'm like, here. And they just don't get it, that there are actually people who were born in Wilmington. And so that's hurtful to see, like, exactly what you're saying. You have to hire so many North Carolinians, and then you watch a business open and, one or two North Carolinians get hired. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, how is this supposed to benefit us? And I'm not seeing my own party do enough about that. And that bothers me. All right. So this is going to be the last one. Sharon, go ahead.
P8, Carl. P8.
Okay, great space, Cassie. I just wanted to take a second and just say to Betty that I love that you went to Converse College. I graduated from Peace back when it was Peace, and from Meredith and Cassie. Women that graduated from women's colleges, we sort of kind of consider each other sort of sisters, even though we graduated from different colleges. I mean, at least I always have, and sort of are happy when we run into each other, people that went to women's colleges, because there's not many that exist anymore.
See, that's something I would like to see come back too. All right, so I love you
Hey,
all. But
Cass,
that's
real
it.
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
One last, only because I feel like we have a transplant that wants to be part of it. Grab Boston Girl real quick, please.
Oh, I thought that her hand, she just never put her hand down. Boston Girl, did you want to say something else, hon? Okay. Yeah. No, I think
Guess
that's
not.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Got it.
I didn't see her hand go down whenever she spoke. So, all right. This was an awesome space. Thank you all so very much. You know, I love you all. And we'll do this again next week, 8:30. But if this keeps running so late, we might have to move it up to 7:30 because, you know, I'm getting old. All right. Good night, y'all.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Let's next week do Marxism and cultural relevance.
Yes, I love that. And Pete, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. You guys were awesome.
All right, cool deal. Hey, I'm gonna favor y'all. I'll be looking for y'all next week.
Hey, Pete, you got a new fan.
All right. So the chat is over. I don't know. It didn't sound like they usually go that late. I did not expect it to go that late. I did not expect them to run 3 hours. So, Nicole, go break something. You have permission. I don't even know who all's still here. But thanks for hanging out, everybody in the chat, and everybody that went over to the Twitter space. That was interesting. I thought there were a lot of good points that were made. So appreciate it, everybody, and have a great weekend. And I guess we'll see you Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. All right. Don't break it.